Chapter 710. Rumble. The Milky Way fell and the Thunder Sea surged, entangling with the Golden Flower Sea. It was a shocking scene. At that moment, the world was shaking and the great Tao was wailing. The aura of destruction reverberated between heaven and earth as if doomsday had arrived. Kill! After the first blow, Feng Zichen and the other two stepped forward, each displaying their strongest moves, and blasted toward Mount Meru. Facing the powerful attacks of the three, the two saints did not choose to fight back. Instead, they used all their strength to activate the innate mind-calming Bodhi formation to the limit. Rumble. The formation was roaring and Mount Meru was shaking. The two seemed to have reached a resonance and filled the air with endless Taoist rhymes. Then, he saw an illusionary figure of a Bodhi tree blotting out the sky and an illusionary figure of a green lotus surrounded by Taoist rhymes slowly appearing in the sky. Boundless divine light poured down, enveloping the entire Mount Meru. In this battle, the two saints of the Western sect had made up their minds to defend. It was not because they were in the wrong first and were embarrassed to attack Haotian. It was because they knew that this battle would not last long. The way of heaven would not allow the three emperors to continue fooling around. Although Mount Meru was located outside of time and space and was not in the untainted world, it was still too close to the untainted world. Once the three emperors unleashed their full strength, the terrifying power would spread and definitely affect the untainted world. At that time, in order to protect the untainted world, the way of heaven would interfere and forcibly end the battle. What Zhuan Ti and the other two had to do was to guard Mount Meru firmly before the way of heaven intervened in the battle to prevent it from being broken into pieces by the three emperors. Feng Zichen and the other two naturally knew what Zhuan Ti and the other two could understand. Therefore, they used all their strength from the beginning to try to break through Mount Meru in the shortest time possible and do their best to destroy the Western sect. However, they had obviously underestimated the means of Zhuan Ti and the other two. No matter how they attacked, when the magical powers hit Mount Meru, it was useless except for splashing out ripples. Since the last time Mount Meru was smashed, Zhuan Ti and Zhuan Yin learned from their painful experience and used all means to improve the defense of Mount Meru to prevent the same thing from happening again. Unexpectedly, their defense was put to use not long after it was set up. It was a coincidence that the three imperial emperors had joined forces to attack. Damn it! What a hard turtle shell. Seeing that the three of them were still unable to break through the defense of Zhousing Mountain, Feng Zichen made up his mind and was about to forcefully summon the Zhousing map that was in the midst of upgrading. Unfortunately, just as he was about to make a move, an extremely oppressive aura suddenly spread out in the void. Then, dark clouds covered the sky, lightning flashed, and thunder rumbled. The heavenly Tao is about to descend. Not good. Seeing this scene, Feng Zichen and the other two immediately understood that there was not much time left for them. If they could not break through Mount Meru before the heavenly axiom completely descended, then their plan for this expedition could be considered to have come to an end. Immediately, Feng Zichen did not hesitate and directly summoned the Zhousing map from the deepest part of the boundless starry sky. Boom! The void shattered with a loud bang, and an ancient scroll broke through the air. In an instant, a powerful aura suddenly erupted and swept across the universe. That was the pressure of an upper-grade innate treasure. Hundreds of thousands of years had passed, and the Zhousing map had completed part of its transformation. It had been promoted from a middle-grade innate treasure to an upper-grade innate treasure. Moreover, more origin power was stored in the Zhousing map's body. If it was given enough time, it could completely transform into a supreme-grade innate treasure. Originally, Feng Zichen wanted to wait for the Zhousing map to transform into a supreme-grade innate treasure before taking it out to intimidate everyone. However, plans could not keep up with changes. In order to deal with the two Western saints, he had to take out the Zhousing map in advance. This time, using the Zhousing map would probably delay the time for it to be promoted to a supreme-grade innate treasure. Suppress. Anger in his heart made Feng Zichen use all his strength to activate the Zhousing map and suppress Mount Meru. Rumble. The Zhousing map slowly unfolded in the air and turned into a bright starry sky. With unparalleled power, it pressed down on Mount Meru. Whoosh! Under the suppression of the Zhouxing map, the defense that the three could not break through finally changed. The Khanate Bodhi tree swayed continuously, as if it could not bear the unimaginable power, and its body gradually bent. The Khanate Tranquil Lotus shook violently, and its petals rustled. Faint cracks appeared as if it was about to break. Go. Seeing this, Hao Tian and the South Pole Emperor also used their divine powers to support the Zhouxing map, further enhancing its power. Under the joint efforts of the three emperors, the Zhouxing map's power was pushed to the limit. The starry sky became deeper and brighter, as if a real boundless starry sky had descended. Crack, crack. Under this mighty force, the Khanate Tranquil Bodhi formation finally showed signs of collapsing. The shadows of the Khanate Bodhi tree and the Khanate Tranquil Lotus began to collapse from top to bottom. Oh no! The moment he saw the Zhouxing map appear, Xuanti knew that something was wrong. Sure enough, as soon as the Zhouxing map moved, the means that they were proud of were broken. The biggest shortcoming of the Western sect was that they did not have a Khanate supreme treasure. Combine! With a loud shout, Xuanti and the South Pole Emperor transformed into their original forms, a huge lotus and a huge Khanate Bodhi tree. Mount Meru was their painstaking effort and the foundation of the Western sect. It could not be destroyed by outsiders. Therefore, even if they had to pay a huge price, they had to protect Mount Meru. Rumble. After Xuanti and the South Pole Emperor transformed into their original forms, they directly merged with their dispersing shadows and reconstructed the Khanate Tranquil Bodhi formation with their original forms. At this moment, the Khanate Tranquil Bodhi formation, which had two saints as the eye of the formation, jumped to the top 3 levels of the primordial world. Its power was unparalleled. A divine light flashed, and the entire Khanate Tranquil Bodhi formation looked brand new. An even stronger force spread out and blocked the attack of the Zhouxing map. Hiss, isn't this a little too tragic? At this moment, even as an enemy, Feng Zichen could not help but sympathize with Xuanti and the South Pole Emperor. Since when did saints fall to this point, using their bodies to replace the Khanate supreme treasure as the eye of the formation? This was too undignified. Yes, the bodies of Xuanti and the South Pole Emperor were definitely not weaker than the Khanate supreme treasure. In the past, the formation that they had set up as the eye of the formation could definitely block the Zhouxing map, or even better. However, in this way, the two of them really lost their dignity as saints. Since they were forced to use their bodies, it meant that the two of them really had no other means. Rumble. Just as the two sides were pulling at each other, the heavenly Tao was finally about to descend. However, at this moment, a vast force suddenly appeared and distorted space and time, isolating the connection between Mount Meru and the primordial world. It was the power of reincarnation. The Lady of Earth had attacked. In the netherworld, she shook the 6 paths of reincarnation disk. With her supreme power, she isolated the connection between Mount Meru and the primordial world to delay the descent of the heavenly Tao. The Lady of Earth and the descendants of the Chaos Fiend God were natural enemies. There was no way to resolve it. It was not strange that she attacked the Western sect. At the same time, in the gap of time and space, powerful Khanate numinous treasures appeared one after another. They released astonishing power and protected the stability of the void together. This was the attack of the great divine abilities to maintain the stability of the void and stop the descent of the heavenly Tao from another angle. This was what it meant to push everyone down. Xuanti and the South Pole Emperor had offended too many people, so everyone hoped that the two of them would be unlucky. Now, it was not easy for someone to find trouble with the two of them. How could the great divine abilities that they had offended let this battle end so easily? Naturally, they would think of ways to prolong the battle so that the two of them would suffer great losses. Ha! Fellow Taoists, you have angered the public. Sensing everything that was happening around him, Feng Zichen could not help but laugh out loud. Then, he directly drew the power of the boundless starry sky into his body. In an instant, his realm rose to the 9th heaven of primordial chaos. Before Xuanti and the South Pole Emperor could react, Feng Zichen, whose strength had greatly increased, directly used his body as a weapon and slammed toward Mount Meru. How strong was Feng Zichen's body? It was not weaker than a Khanate cardinal treasure at all. With the support of the boundless starry sky, the power, therefore, his collision directly shattered the Khanate mind-calming Bodhi array. With a boom, Feng Zichen directly crashed into the Khanate Bodhi tree, sending it flying high into the air. Its leaves and branches scattered all over the ground. Then, Feng Zichen used the recoil force to crash into the Khanate mind-calming lotus, sending it flying so hard that a few petals fell off. Rumble! The formation eye shifted, and the array was immediately broken. With a roar, Mount Meru, which was decorated with gems, appeared in front of the three of them. In the distance, after Zhuan Ti and the South Pole Emperor landed, they turned back into their human forms. However, they did not look good. Obviously, they had suffered serious injuries. On the other side, Feng Zichen did not feel good either. The power that was supported by the boundless starry sky was directly repelled and brought him a lot of backlash. However, the result was gratifying. The Khanate mind-calming Bodhi array was broken by him. 1 primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian and 2 half-step primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian. Fellow Taoists, do you think that you can deal with 2 saints with this strength? Suppressing his injuries, Saint Zhuan Ti said with an ugly expression. If they really fought, the other party might not be their match. They did not make a move previously mainly because they were worried about Mount Meru. But now, Mount Meru could not be saved, so they did not have to worry. It's useless to just talk about it. We have to try before we know. The Khanate mind-calming Bodhi array was broken, and the destruction of Mount Meru was inevitable. The three of them had almost achieved their goal. Even if they were defeated by Zhuan Ti, they would not lose anything. Therefore, Feng Zichen was very free and easy now. You're courting death. A cold light flashed in his eyes. Saint Zhuan Ti raised the wonderful 7 treasures tree and brushed it toward the three of them. At the same time, Saint Jieyin also moved. The divine banner quietly appeared and brushed toward the three of them. Fellow Taoists, I'll deal with Saint Jieyin. I'll leave Saint Zhuan Ti to you. After turning his head and saying that, Feng Zichen faced the divine banner and fought with Saint Jieyin. Behind him, Haotian and the great emperor of the South Pole joined forces and fought with Saint Zhuan Ti. In such a civil war, saints could not use the power of the heavenly Tao, and the supremes of heaven and earth could not use the power of their ranks. Therefore, they could only rely on their own strength. However, nothing was absolute. The heavenly court had a huge advantage over the Western sect, and that was that their luck was more powerful. It was precisely with the support of the heavenly court's luck that Haotian and Luai's, 2 half-step primordial chaos existences, could fight with Zhuan Ti, who was at the primordial chaos level. Otherwise, the two of them would have been suppressed and sealed by Saint Zhuan Ti long ago. Rumble! As the two sides exchanged blows, terrifying shockwaves swept out in all directions, destroying everything in their surroundings. The void collapsed layer by layer, and the rules shattered one after another. Everything no longer existed. The outcome of Mount Meru, which was at the center of the battle, could be imagined. Layer after layer of the mountain disappeared, and very soon, it became much smaller. The innate Tao patterns carved on the mountain did not play any role and could not stop the destruction of Mount Meru at all. Fortunately, Saint Jieyin had taken away the disciples living on Mount Meru in advance. Otherwise, the Western sect would have been destroyed again. This battle lasted for 100 years. Because the terrifying aftermath broke through the seal of the Great Medium and affected the untainted world, it was forcibly stopped by the heavenly Tao. When the battle ended, Mount Meru had already turned into ruins. It was even more tragic than before, and only the foundation of the mountain was left. And this was the result of the 2 Western sages protecting it at all costs. Otherwise, Feng Zichen and the other 2 would definitely be able to completely erase Mount Meru from the world. Not long after the heavenly Tao took action, Feng Zichen and the other 2 dragged their injured bodies and left, leaving behind the grieving and indignant Zhuan Ti. He wanted to cry at the ruins of Mount Meru but had no tears. This should be the 3rd time that Mount Meru was destroyed. First, it was the war between Taoists and demons, then it was the tribulation of the inner demons, and finally this time. The three tribulations, each more ruthless than the last, caused Mount Meru, which was not inferior to Mount Kunlun, to fall to the level of a top-blessed enclave. It was miserable. Mount Meru. It was really a mountain full of disasters. If he wanted to recover this time, he did not know how much it would cost. Taoist Haoyan, how do you feel after this battle? After returning to the heavenly court, Feng Zichen asked Haoyan. Carefree. Although he was seriously injured, Haoyan could not hide his excitement and said, after this battle, not only did he untie the knot in his heart, but he was also one step closer to primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian. It could be said that he had gained a lot. It's good that you have gained something. It means that this battle was not in vain. Nodding, Feng Zichen replied. Chapter 711. Fighting with a real master of the origin was undoubtedly a great opportunity for Haoyan, who was half a step into the origin. This could help him understand the realm of the origin better and lay a solid foundation for his future breakthroughs. I have to go back to heal, so I won't disturb you. When I recover, I'll come back to talk with you in detail. After chatting with Haoyan for a while, Feng Zichen suddenly got up and left. He was not seriously injured. After all, if they really fought, Saint Jian might not be his match. However, Haoyan and Lei Zhe were seriously injured and needed to be healed in time. Otherwise, it might have a little impact on their future. Therefore, Feng Zichen was in a hurry to leave. Not long after Feng Zichen left, Lei Zhe also left. Soon, only Haoyan was left in the heavenly court. Your Majesty, what should we do with the fake Yaoji and her son? At this time, Yao Qi walked over and asked Haoyan softly. Find a time to kill them. Haoyan frowned and said, yes. Yao Qi nodded and did not object. No matter what the truth was about Yaoji, that person had pretended to be the princess of the heavenly court and married a mortal and had a child. It was a fact that had spread throughout the three realms. If the heavenly court did not kill her to correct the heavenly prestige, how could they maintain their dignity? By the way, Yao Qi, I was seriously injured in this battle. I need to recuperate in seclusion for a while. So, during my absence, I'll have to trouble you to take care of the heavenly court. Haoyan's face became paler as he spoke. Obviously, that was the power left in his body by Saint Xuanti, which was still destroying his body. Your Majesty, go ahead. I'll take care of the heavenly court. I just don't know if your Majesty's injury is serious. Seeing Haoyan's pale face, Yao Qi said worriedly. It's okay. It's just a small injury. Smiling at Yao Qi, Haoyan disappeared on the spot. He went to the origin of the heaven realm to heal his injuries. After Feng Zichen and Lei Zhe left the heaven court, Lei Zhe rushed back to the Nine Clouds lightning region to heal himself. After Feng Zichen wandered around the boundless starry sky, he quietly went through the passage of the world tree and rushed to the realm sea. He hadn't been to the realm sea for a long time. This time, he could use the excuse of recuperating to disappear in front of everyone for a while. It had been more than 100,000 years since Feng Zichen returned from the realm sea. As for the realm sea, that was even more formidable. It might have already been several million years, or even several tens of millions of years. The difference in the flow of time between the two was quite big. After so much time had passed, he hurried over to realm sea again. It was still the same as before, spacious and desolate, without too many changes. But when Feng Zichen stood in the realm sea and carefully sensed it for a while, he discovered that the current realm sea was greatly different from before. In his perception, among the countless small and medium worlds floating in the realm sea, most of them were connected to him. Even among the 3,000 large worlds standing at the peak of the realm sea, there were dozens of large worlds that appeared in his perception. Obviously, these worlds were already under his control, or were in the process of being under his control. And this was all thanks to the 10,000 Worlds trading city. After careful calculation, Feng Zichen discovered that almost 1% of the entire realm sea had been taken down by the 10,000 Worlds trading city. It seems that they have spent a lot of effort these years. Looking at the results of the 10,000 Worlds trading city, Feng Zichen said with emotion. Then, his figure flashed and came to the outside of time and space, where the 10,000 Worlds trading city was located, in the God realm that was created by him. Compared to before, the God realm didn't change much. Even if the 10,000 Worlds trading city had taken down nearly 1% of the realm sea's territory, it was still the same. Feng Zichen had expected this. And this time, he came to solve this problem. Those small and medium worlds were the associated worlds of the greater world. Once they were touched, the will of the greater world would definitely sense it. Therefore, in order not to alert the enemy and to better invade the greater world, the 10,000 Worlds trading city didn't touch those small and medium worlds even though they had been taken down. As for why they didn't integrate the greater world that they had already taken down into the God realm, the reason was even simpler. In every greater world, there was a chaos demon god sleeping, and the 10,000 Worlds trading city wasn't a match for the chaos demon god at all. Therefore, in order to prevent waking up the sleeping chaos demon god, even if the 10,000 Worlds trading city had taken over those worlds, they didn't dare to integrate them into the God realm. Otherwise, once the sleeping chaos demon god woke up, the 10,000 Worlds trading city might be able to survive, but the God realm would definitely be finished. Without enough power, the 10,000 Worlds trading city wouldn't touch the greater world. However, although the 10,000 Worlds trading city didn't have the power to deal with the chaos demon god, Feng Zichen did. He came here to deal with the chaos demon god. Elder Yu, long time no see. In the center of the 10,000 Worlds trading city, Feng Zichen looked at Yoyu clan who hadn't changed much and said guiltily. The biggest change was that there wasn't any change. After all, the Realm Sea wasn't as good as the Eldritch world. Otherwise, Yoyu clan wouldn't have not improved much after such a long time. Your Majesty, why are you here? Seeing Feng Zichen who suddenly appeared in front of him, Yoyu clan asked curiously. Of course, I'm here to relieve your worries. Suppressing the guilt in his heart, Feng Zichen said. Relieve our worries? Could it be? As if he thought of something, Yoyu clan couldn't help but look happy. All of you wait here first. Once the chaos demon god falls, immediately pull the greater world that he's in into the God realm. After gathering everyone, Feng Zichen instructed. Then, he left directly and hurried to the greater world. His first target was a greater world called the Primordial World. This world had been completely infiltrated by the 10,000 Worlds trading city. It was only because of the chaos demon god that it didn't integrate into the God realm. What Feng Zichen wanted to do now was to kill the chaos demon god in it to create an opportunity for the 10,000 Worlds trading city. Although there was a boundary set up by the primordial demon god outside the primordial world, the origin of this world had been infiltrated by the 10,000 Worlds trading city. Naturally, the boundary was completely useless. Therefore, Feng Zichen easily entered this realm and found the sleeping place of the primordial fiend celestial without a hitch. After arriving here, Feng Zichen didn't rush to make a move. Instead, he started to draw Dao patterns and set up layers of restrictions in the void. Then, he took out the 10,000 spirit crown and the Zhouxing painting and laid an ambush in the void. After making all the necessary preparations, Feng Zichen took out the Hongmeng Daozhong and violently blasted it at the sleeping primordial demon god. Clang! The power of the Hongmeng Daozhong was first compressed to the limit by Feng Zichen, then suddenly exploded on the primordial demon god. The tremendous power directly sent the primordial demon god flying, and his body disintegrated in midair. Blood and flesh splattered everywhere. Who is it? The primordial demon god was naturally awakened by this heavy blow. But before he could see the enemy's face clearly, he saw countless stars swirling in front of him and enveloping him. In the void, an ancient scroll appeared, forming a vast starry sky and sucking the primordial demon god in. Clang! The Hongmeng Daozhong trembled again and entered the Zhouxing painting as well, continuing to attack the primordial demon god. After a while, the bloodied primordial demon god brandished a long spear and charged out of the Zhouxing painting against Hongmeng Daozhong's suppression. It's you. As soon as the primordial demon god exited the Zhouxing painting, he saw Feng Zichen standing in the distance. This time he was furious. The primordial demon god roared and charged at Feng Zichen with the primordial war spear in his hand. However, as soon as he took a few steps, Countless Dao inscriptions burst out around him. Like chains, they pulled him back into the heavenly cycle star map. Kill! This time, not only did Hongmeng Daozhong enter the Zhouxing painting, but Feng Zichen also entered and attacked the primordial demon god together. Roar! After an unknown period of time, the primordial demon god suddenly exploded. He swept Feng Zichen away with his spear and pushed away Hongmeng Daozhong. Once again he charged out of the Zhouxing painting. However, after this attack, his aura suddenly weakened a lot. Obviously, in order to escape, he paid a heavy price. Go! After escaping this time, the primordial demon god did not charge at Feng Zichen immediately. Instead, he used a secret technique to try to contact the other chaos demon gods. Unfortunately, the results were disappointing. This time, Feng Zichen came prepared. Everything here was isolated by him. It was impossible for the primordial demon god to send a message outside. Bang! While the primordial demon god was sending a message, the 10,000 spirit crown suddenly appeared and smashed on the primordial demon god's head. After being hit, the primordial demon god felt dizzy and could not control his body for a moment. He fell to the ground directly. At this time, the Zhouxing painting opened again and pulled the primordial demon god in. Let's see if you can survive this time. Making up his mind, Feng Zichen took out another Khanate supreme treasure and blasted it at the primordial demon god. Boom! As the void trembled, a finger that blotted out the sky appeared and pointed at the primordial demon god. It was the human Dao imperial seal. Many years ago, Feng Zichen had taken it back. Today, in order to deal with the primordial demon god, he even used this treasure. After the human Dao imperial seal, Hongmeng Daozhong and the 10,000 spirit crown also released their power and blasted at the primordial demon god. With the power of 4 Khanate supreme treasures and Feng Zichen at the 6th firmament of chaos primordial chaos, the primordial chaos demon god had been besieged for hundreds of years and finally killed him. The primordial demon god had fallen. While Hongmeng Daozhong was devouring the primordial demon god's great Dao imprint, Feng Zichen cleaned up the battlefield and checked his spoils of war. A primordial chaos demon god's corpse, a portion of its origin, a damaged primordial chaos spear, and a complete greater thousand world. Not bad at all. These things were almost equivalent to the entire wealth of Xuanti and Xuanti. Fortunately, they did not know about the existence of the Realm Sea. Otherwise, their eyes would have turned red, and the primordial chaos demon gods would not have a moment of peace. Unfortunately, they did not know, and neither did the others in the Eldritch Wilderness. The enormous treasury that was the Realm Sea still belonged to Feng Zichen alone. After notifying the myriad realms exchange to pull the primordial world into the divine realm, Feng Zichen turned and walked to the next greater thousand world. In this world, he used the same trick again and killed another primordial chaos demon god. Unfortunately, this primordial chaos demon god did not have a broken primordial chaos treasure. Otherwise, he would not have been killed by Feng Zichen so easily. Thinking about it, when the 3,000 primordial chaos demon gods and Pangu fought in the chaos, they could not even save their own lives, let alone the magic treasures in their hands. Naturally, it was shattered beyond recognition. In fact, it was completely destroyed. It should be normal for primordial chaos demon gods to not have magic treasures in their hands. Primordial chaos demon gods who had magic treasures in their hands were different. Thinking about it now, Feng Zichen was really lucky. He only killed a few primordial chaos demon gods, but they all had broken primordial chaos treasures in their hands, which made him rich. However, maybe because he had killed too many primordial chaos demon gods, his good luck seemed to have come to an end. In the following period of time, Feng Zichen killed another 3 primordial chaos demon gods in a row, but they did not drop a single broken primordial chaos treasure. This made him very depressed. After complaining for a while, Feng Zichen continued to rush to the next world, the Grand Celestial World. In this world, even though Feng Zichen was prepared in advance, he was still exposed, and he was once again surrounded by the primordial chaos demon gods. This time, he was exposed not because Feng Zichen was not well prepared, but because the primordial chaos demon god was too decisive. The primordial chaos demon god saw that the situation was not good, and he chose to self-destruct, which caught Feng Zichen off guard. If he did not react quickly enough, the Zhouxing map would have been destroyed by the primordial chaos demon god's self-destruction. Even so, the Zhouxing map was severely damaged, and it would take a long time to recover. To be able to protect the Zhouxing map was already Feng Zichen's limit. He could no longer seal the ripples caused by the primordial chaos demon god's self-destruction. Therefore, after the primordial chaos demon god's self-destruction, the terrifying ripples spread, and the entire world sea was shaken. The primordial chaos demon gods who were in deep sleep were naturally awakened. What happened next was much simpler. When the primordial chaos demon gods who woke up saw Feng Zichen, who was at the center of the primordial chaos demon god's self-destruction, they immediately understood what happened. When they released their consciousness to sense for a while, they realized that besides the primordial chaos demon god, there were 5 other comrades who had lost their auras. Evidently, they were killed by Feng Zichen. In an instant, the primordial chaos demon gods were enraged. This was the second time that they were hunted down. Did the primordial chaos demon gods not care about their dignity? Chapter 7:12. Sensing that the chaos demon gods had awakened, Feng Zichen did not wait for them to attack him, but fled directly to the untainted land. If he did not escape now, when would he escape? Feng Zichen's reaction was fast. Before the chaos demon gods attacked, he had run far away. But unfortunately, he still could not get rid of the chaos demon gods and was chased closely by them. However, it was also thanks to his fast reaction that the chaos demon gods did not form an encirclement. Otherwise, Feng Zichen would not be able to escape even if he wanted to. Whoosh! In the realm sea, a stream of light flashed and disappeared in an instant. It was Feng Zichen's fleeing figure. Behind him were hundreds of chaos demon gods. They formed a vast expanse and were following closely behind him. They looked extremely terrifying. However, Feng Zichen did not panic at all because he was used to it. Anyway, those chaos demon gods could not catch up with him and were now being played by him. After cultivating in the boundless starry sky for so many years, although Feng Zichen had not developed a way to restrain self-explosion, he had increased his speed again and again to ensure that no one could catch up with him. As long as he was not trapped by these chaos demon gods and was just being chased, these chaos demon gods would definitely not be able to do anything to Feng Zichen. Feng Zichen, who was wandering around the realm sea with the chaos demon gods, suddenly thought of something. Now that the chaos demon gods had run out to chase him, wouldn't there be no one guarding the great thousand world that they had occupied? Thinking of this, Feng Zichen was about to send a message to the Myriad Realms trading city so that they could take advantage of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to quickly occupy the great thousand world. But immediately, Feng Zichen gave up this idea. It was not that this plan was not good enough, but it was obviously not suitable for him to contact the Myriad Realms trading city at this time. There were hundreds of chaos demon gods behind Feng Zichen. Once he contacted the Myriad Realms trading city at this time, the fluctuation of his mind would be immediately sensed by the chaos demon gods. In that case, wouldn't the Myriad Realms trading city be exposed if the chaos fiend Celestial tracked it down? The chaos demon god could not deal with Feng Zichen, but he could deal with the 10,000 Realms trading city. It was conceivable that once the chaos demon Celestial detected the existence of the Myriad Realms trading city, Feng Zichen would have to take it away. Otherwise, the city would definitely be torn to pieces by the furious chaos demon gods. Awesome! This method is simply amazing. After going through this method again in his mind, Feng Zichen couldn't help but marvel at his own wisdom. He would lead the chaos demon god away, and then the trading city of the 10,000 realms would devour the greater thousand realms while the chaos demon god was away. This plan was perfect. But now was indeed not the time to carry out this plan to avoid alerting the enemy. But next time, when Feng Zichen was fully prepared, that might not be the case. Perhaps he could seize 1/10 of the greater thousand realms or even more through this plan. Taking a deep look at the realm sea, Feng Zichen seemed to see the picture of the realm of gods standing at the top of all the realms. After that, he planned to leave. It was meaningless to continue to lead the chaos demon god away, so he might as well return to the untainted land as soon as possible to prepare for the next arrival. As the saying went, the chaos demon god wouldn't be defeated a third time after suffering 2 losses in a row, so he must have some means to deal with him. Therefore, the next time, Feng Zichen would be facing a tough battle, so he naturally had to be fully prepared. Fellow Taoists, please don't chase after him. Looking back at the chaos demon god, Feng Zichen suddenly said. Hearing that, the chaos demon god didn't retreat. Instead, he used a secret method to forcibly increase his speed and got closer to Feng Zichen. How boring! Shaking his head, Feng Zichen took out a ball of chaos origin qi. Then he threw it back without looking back. That was the origin qi of the chaos demon god that he had killed, and it contained amazing power. After throwing out that ball of chaos origin qi, Feng Zichen ignited his own origin qi to increase his speed to another level. In the blink of an eye, he pulled away from the chaos demon god again. Seeing that, the chaos demon god naturally didn't want to be outdone, so he ignited his origin qi and chased after him. However, just as they approached the origin qi, Feng Zichen spat out a word coldly. Explode! At his command, the massive origin of chaos exploded and a terrifying power wreaked havoc. The few chaos demon gods who were in the center of the explosion were blown into pieces and turned into a rain of blood that fell from the sky. As for the chaos demon gods that were far away from the center of the explosion, they were sent flying by the terrifying power and were more or less injured. Not to mention them, even Feng Zichen, who had already run far away, was affected. He was sent flying by the ripples caused by the explosion of chaos origin qi, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. However, Feng Zichen took advantage of this opportunity to escape successfully. He left the realm sea and returned to the untainted land. Puff! After returning to the boundless starry sky, Feng Zichen couldn't suppress his injuries anymore. He spat out a mouthful of blood, and his injuries completely broke out. With a puff, countless wounds suddenly appeared on his body, and blood spurted out like a fountain. This time, Feng Zichen's injuries were not light. First of all, when the Tianyuan demon god exploded, in order to protect the Zhouxing map, Feng Zichen could be said to have taken most of the damage from the explosion. Because of this, he suffered a lot of injuries. Then, he was chased by the chaos demon god, which further worsened his injuries. Finally, the explosion of the chaos origin qi was not much weaker than the explosion of the chaos demon god. Feng Zichen was seriously injured after being injured by the self-detonation twice and being chased by the chaos demonic celestial. However, even so, he was not in a hurry to heal his injuries. Instead, he contacted the Youyu clan through a secret method and asked them to keep a low profile and stop all activities in the trading city of the 10,000 realms. Wasn't it courting death to cause trouble under the eyes of the chaos demon god? After instructing the Youyu clan, Feng Zichen began to heal his injuries in seclusion. At this time, it had only been 100 years since he left the untainted land. When Feng Zichen was in seclusion at this moment, the disciples of the Clan of Enlightenment gathered on the Kunlun mountain and were secretly planning a big event that would shake the untainted land. They were going to raid the execution ground. Soon, the heavenly court would publicly kill the fake Yaoji and Yang Jian on the immortal slaying platform to correct the heavenly might. And the 12 golden immortals of the Clan of Enlightenment were going to raid the execution ground so that they could save the fake Yaoji and Yang Jian. Yang Jian was the second disciple of the heavenly lord of the origin, immortal Yuding's only disciple. As his master, how could immortal Yuding watch his disciple be killed by the heavenly court? Therefore, he wanted to save them. Saving one was saving two was also saving. Therefore, immortal Yuding planned to save both the fake Yaoji and Yang Jian. However, there was a problem at this time. He, immortal Yuding, did not have the ability to save people from the heavenly court. That was awkward. However, it did not matter. He could not, but he still had his fellow disciples. If they worked together, they would be able to come up with a perfect solution. After making up his mind, immortal Yuding directly called his fellow disciples to his cave residence. Fellow disciples, I believe you have heard about Yang Jian. He will be dragged to the immortal slaying platform in a few days. Poor Wei is incompetent and can't save him from the hands of the heavenly court. Therefore, I shamelessly invited everyone here today. I hope you can help me come up with an idea to save poor Wei's poor disciple. Seeing that everyone had arrived, Immortal Yu Ding said with a face full of shame. No one was surprised by this. Before coming, everyone had already guessed why Immortal Yu Ding had invited them here. However, they did not have a good idea on how to save Yang Jian. This, junior brother, in my opinion, we might as well go directly to the heavenly court and ask for him. I think, with our status as disciples of the saints, the heavenly court will not disrespect us. Perhaps they will release martial nephew Yang Jian on the spot. After thinking for a while, Guang Qingzi, who was the eldest senior brother of the clan of enlightenment, said, "In the past, when Haotian was determined to give in, there was naturally no problem with his method. But now, Haotian's attitude had changed drastically. If the disciples of the clan of enlightenment were to follow Guang Qingzi's method, they would go to the heavenly court to ask for him. It would be good if the heavenly court did not capture them together, let alone release them. Fortunately, there were still some intelligent disciples of the clan of enlightenment who stopped Guang Qingzi's plan. That's not appropriate. This method is not appropriate." Just as Guang Qingzi finished speaking, Immortal Yu Ding directly objected. He had personally experienced the change in the heavenly court's attitude. What's wrong? Guang Qingzi was not angry when he heard his method being objected to. He only asked in confusion. He had just come out of seclusion and did not know the changes in the heavenly court. He was completely following the previous method. Otherwise, he would not have come up with such a stupid plan. Eldest senior brother, you might not know, but the current heavenly court is completely different from before. It suddenly became incomparably tough and did not give us any face at all. Take the previous example. I wanted to save Yang Jian and his mother when the heavenly soldiers captured him. However, before I could make a move, the great Luo Holy Venerate in the heavenly court looked at me from afar. At that moment, I felt the threat of death. It seemed that as long as I dared to save Yang Jian, the Daluo Taoist priests would kill me without hesitation. Recalling the scene that day, Immortal Yu Ding still had some lingering fear. This was the first time everyone had heard of this matter. At this moment, they could not help but be shocked. The heavenly court was indeed different from before. From what junior brother said, the poor Wei's method just now really won't work. Guang Qingzi shook his head and said, following that, everyone began to discuss amongst themselves. However, after discussing for a long time, no one could come up with a feasible method. The only way now is to raid the execution ground. Seeing that everyone had discussed for a long time and still could not come up with a feasible plan, Immortal Yu Ding gritted his teeth and said, "Raid the execution ground?" Hearing this, everyone asked with some uncertainty. Yes, raid the execution ground. If we combine our strength, we can definitely rescue Yang Jian and his mother from the demon execution stage. Immortal Yu Ding nodded and repeated, "That's also a way." After thinking carefully, everyone could not help but nod. This was indeed a feasible method. The 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect may not be very strong individually, but if the 12 of them joined forces, they could even fight the real Daluo Taoist priests. In addition, with the magic treasures given to them by the primeval Lord of Heaven, they had the ability to protect themselves even in the face of a sage-to-be expert. Therefore, if they joined forces, it would not be difficult to rescue Yang Jian and his mother from the heavenly court. As for how to deal with the aftermath after rescuing Yang Jian and his mother, it would be even simpler. What, does the heavenly court dare to go to Kunlun Mountain and ask for them? Okay, let's do it. After making up their minds, everyone nodded and said. At this time, the disciples of the Chan sect had not yet fallen out with each other and were on good terms. Naturally, they were willing to share the worries and difficulties of their senior brothers. It was far from being like the later generations, where they all left Kunlun Mountain and passed down their orthodoxies. Poor Wei, on behalf of my inferior disciple, Yang Jian, thank you all. Seeing that everyone nodded without hesitation, Immortal Yu Ding was very touched and could not help but bow to everyone. We're all family. "Senior brother, why are you so polite to us?" Seeing this, Immortal Tai hurriedly stepped forward and supported Immortal Yuding, not letting him bow down. The other disciples of the Chan sect also nodded in agreement. In this way, the matter of raiding the execution ground to save Yang Jian was settled. In fact, there was a better and faster way to save Yang Jian and his mother besides raiding the execution ground. That was, Immortal Yuding went to see the primeval Lord of Heaven and begged him to save Yang Jian. There was no need for the primeval Lord of Heaven to do anything. He only needed to write a letter to Haoyan and soften his words, asking Haoyan to give him face and let Yang Jian go. In this case, would Haoyan disrespect the primeval Lord of Heaven for Yang Jian? Of course, after locking Yang Jian up for a period of time, he would find an excuse to let him go. However, none of the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect said such a simple method. Did they not think of it? No, they would have thought of such a simple method. Since they had thought of it, why didn't they say it? Of course, it was for the sake of that ridiculous face. If the primeval Lord of Heaven asked Haoyan for Yang Jian, it would undoubtedly make the primeval Lord of Heaven lose face in front of Haoyan. Therefore, even if they went to the execution ground, the disciples of the Chan sect would not let the primeval Lord of Heaven appear. The face of the Chan sect was very precious. Time flew by. Soon, the day of the fake Yaoji and Yang Jian's execution came. On this day, the two gods of war led the elites of the Thunder region and personally escorted the fake Yaoji and Yang Jian to the immortal slaying platform outside the southern heaven gate. The monster slaying platform was located not far from the southern heaven gate. As for why the monster slaying platform was set up here, the purpose was naturally to warn all living beings. Chapter 7:13. The execution took place outside the South Heaven Gate. Anyone with a bit of cultivation in the three realms could clearly see the scene of the execution. The fear in the hearts of all living beings naturally served as a warning. However, although setting up the immortal slaying platform outside the Southern Heavenly Gate could warn all living beings, it also gave some people an opportunity. For example, robbing the execution ground. Outside the Southern Heavenly Gate was considered to be out of the Heavenly Court. It was naturally much more convenient to make a move here than in the Heavenly Court. Why do you think those Chan sect disciples were so confident in robbing the execution ground and saving Yang Jian and his mother? It was because the immortal slaying platform was outside the Southern Heavenly Gate. Once they succeeded, they could directly escape into the Eldritch Wilderness. It was very convenient. If the immortal slaying platform was in the Heavenly Court, they would have to think carefully about whether to rob the execution ground. Because in the Heavenly Court, even if they successfully rescued Yang Jian and his mother, it would not be easy for them to escape. There was a high chance that they would be suppressed by the Heavenly Court. Kneel. After pulling Yang Jian onto the immortal slaying platform, the heavenly soldier pressed down hard and forced him to kneel on the ground. Then there was a long wait. The Heavenly Court did not need to choose a good time to kill people, but since they wanted to warn all living beings, they had to choose a time when there were many people to maximize their goal. The waiting now was just to give the living beings of the three realms time to react so that they would look over. In the blink of an eye, 2 hours had passed, and a month had passed in the mortal realm. Execute. As the executioners, the North and South war gods felt that most people had noticed this place, so they ordered the execution. With the order, streaks of blood-red light rose from the immortal slaying platform. Then, endless blood-red light gathered and turned into a blood-red sword that slashed at Yang Jian's head. At that moment, a large array suddenly covered the entire immortal slaying platform in the void. Just as Yang Jian was about to die, the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect finally made their move. In the array, wind and lightning appeared together, and flames intertwined, bursting out with great power and shattering the blood-red sword formed by the immortal slaying platform. You thieves really came. Our preparations were not in vain. Seeing that someone had come to rob the execution ground, the North and South war gods were not surprised. They immediately activated the backup plan they had prepared in advance. It was clear that they had already planned for someone to come to the execution ground. No matter what, Yang Jian was a third-generation disciple of the Chan school. How could the Chan school let him be killed by the heavenly court so easily? Naturally, they had to save him. On the other hand, the second-generation disciples of the Chan school were famous for being bold and unscrupulous. They were completely capable of robbing the execution ground. Since they had a guess in their hearts, the heavenly courts naturally had to make arrangements early so as to avoid being robbed of the execution ground and losing face in front of all the living beings in the 3 dimensions. Kill. Not long after the 12 golden immortals of the Chan school attacked, a large number of heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals suddenly rushed out from the South Heaven Gate and surrounded the immortal slaying platform. There were more than 100,000 heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals. 100,000 celestial soldiers and celestial generals. This time, in order to deal with the 12 golden immortals of Chan school, the heavenly courts had sent out 100,000 heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals. They were all elites among elites. Don't underestimate these 100,000 celestial soldiers and celestial generals. The current celestial heavens was no longer the celestial heavens of the journey to the west. These heavenly soldiers were selected from the Khanate races that lived in the heavenly realm. Each of them was a relatively outstanding disciple of their race. Among them, the weakest was at the golden immortal realm. As for the heavenly generals, they were at the Tai Jingxian realm. Their commander, like the 12 golden immortals of Chan school, was Daluo Jingxian. When these 100,000 heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals worked together with the Khanate formation that the heavenly courts had specially prepared for them, their power could even temporarily trap a quasi-saint mighty figure. Even the Daluo Taoist priests would not be able to escape the fate of being suppressed if they fell into it. Not to mention the 12 golden immortals of Chan school. It could be said that the heavenly courts had put in a lot of effort to deal with the 12 golden immortals of Chan school this time. Activate the formation, kill. As if they had practiced countless times, the 100,000 heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals had just formed an encirclement when they directly formed a formation and charged toward the 12 golden immortals of Chan school on the immortal slaying platform. Rumble. The soaring aura of the weapons erupted and swept everything, directly shattering the formation set up by the 12 golden immortals of Chan school. However, the 12 golden immortals of Chan school were disciples of the saints after all, and they were also Khanate godfiends. Naturally, they would not be so easily killed by the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals. Primeval formation, activate. The moment the formation shattered, the 12 golden immortals of Chan school moved and formed another Khanate formation, the primeval formation. Although this formation was named after primeval, it was jointly created by the 3 Pure Ones. This was the formation that the 3 Pure Ones had specially created for the 12 golden immortals of Chan school. Not only could the primeval formation maximize the power of the 12 golden immortals of Chan school, but it could also condense an incarnation of the primeval Lord of Heaven, thereby displaying part of his power. The reason why the 12 golden immortals of Chan school were so confident was because of that supreme array formation. Once the incarnation of the primeval Lord of Heaven appeared, how many people in the Eldritch world could compete with it? Rumble. Once the primeval formation was formed, a supreme power immediately spread out. Then, a supreme phantom slowly appeared in front of everyone. Boom. In an instant, an indescribable power attacked everyone's hearts, causing their minds to tremble. The heavenly court's formation immediately showed signs of instability. How dare you be so impudent? Do you really think that there's no one in the heavenly court? At this critical moment, 10 tall figures suddenly rushed out from the North Star heavenly palace that had long fallen into silence. Violent auras surged around them. They were Emperor North Star's guards. At the same time, they were also experts of the human race. Emperor North Star was a god, the sovereign of a race and the ancestor of a Tao. How could he not have people under him? In fact, Emperor North Star had the most subordinates among the heavenly court's great emperors. At the same time, he was also the strongest. As the Tao ancestor of the celestial and demon Tao, if the cultivators of the celestial and demon Tao joined the heavenly court, they would naturally be under his name. Apart from being the celestial and demon Dao ancestor, he was also the lord of the Khanate sword Dao. Therefore, the sword Dao cultivators would naturally be his subordinates. Apart from that, Emperor North Star was also the sage emperor of the human race. Therefore, the power of the human race in the heavenly court naturally belonged to him. During the era of the 5 heavenly emperors, the heavenly court was filled with human experts. After the 5 heavenly emperors abdicated, they naturally couldn't bring all the human experts with them. Therefore, these human experts naturally became the subordinates of Emperor North Star. Emperor North Star, who controlled so much power, was the most powerful person in the heavenly court. However, although Emperor North Star had great power, his subordinates gradually quieted down after his death. They didn't interact with outsiders and silently waited for their majesty to return. As he hadn't shown himself for a long time, many people neglected this power. This time, the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect didn't consider this power when they attacked. That was because they hadn't shown themselves for too long. However, they forgot that they were different from others. They were the disciples of the primordial heavenly lord. Emperor North Star had died in the hands of the primordial heavenly lord. In other words, the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect had a grudge with Emperor North Star's subordinates. Moreover, it was a deadly grudge. How could Emperor North Star's subordinates not react when they saw their enemies flaunting their power in front of them? Immediately, 10 people rushed out. These 10 people all cultivated the Tao of celestial demons. Moreover, each of them had reached the realm of Tao Lord Tai. Tao Lord Tai. He was Tai Jingxian, who cultivated the Tao of Khanate. Although he was called Tai Jingxian, his power wasn't any weaker than Dao Yuo Jingxian. In fact, he was even stronger. The primordial array. Not bad. I wonder if it's better than the primordial array of the human race? When the 10 human experts arrived in front of the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect, they didn't waste any time and directly used the strongest array of the human race, the primordial array. At the end of the primordial era, when the demon race was massacring the humans, the sage emperor of the human race, Feng Zichen, set up the primordial array and fought against the Eastern Emperor Tai without losing. This made the array famous. It became a supreme array that was comparable to the heavenly cycle star array and was ranked as one of the 3 great array formations of the primordial world. Yes, there were 4 of the 3 great array formations of the primordial world. There was nothing wrong with that. In fact, the primordial array was naturally inferior to the primordial array. However, the conditions for setting up the primordial array were too harsh. It required 10 Khanate numinous treasures of the corresponding attributes. With the strength of these human experts, they probably couldn't find them. Therefore, they could only use other Dharma treasures to replace them. However, this way, it was hard to say how much power the primordial array could unleash. However, no matter how weak it couldn't defeat the primordial array. Could it not be on par with it? Rumble. As the 10 people moved, 10 postnatal cardinal treasures of different attributes slowly appeared. Immediately, all kinds of great Tao interweaved in the world. It started from the first origin, went through yin, yang, heaven, and earth, and ended in the 10 directions. Boom. In the end, the great Tao interweaved into a huge great Tao divine diagram that lay between heaven and earth, emitting shocking waves. The primordial array, infinitely weakened, was completed. Primordial array, rise. Seeing the great Tao divine diagram appear, the 10 experts walked into the diagram without hesitation and became one with the array. Boom. The divine diagram of the great path shook, and a vast aura spread out. An indescribably noble figure slowly appeared. The incarnation of the heavenly Tao. The supreme achievement of the primordial array in the primordial world. However, compared to the incarnation of the heavenly Lord of primordial beginning condensed by the primordial array, the incarnation of the heavenly Tao was undoubtedly more blurry. One could barely see its shape. Obviously, this was caused by the 10 experts' lack of strength and Dharma treasures. However, even so, the power of the incarnation of the heavenly Tao was not weaker than the incarnation of the heavenly Lord of primordial beginning. After all, the strength of the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning was not inferior to the Heavenly Tao. If the incarnations of the two were on the same level, how could the incarnation of the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning be a match for the incarnation of the Heavenly Tao? The 10 of them stepped forward and used the primordial array to block the primordial array of the 12 golden immortals of Chan School. They fought on the immortal slaying platform. At this moment, the 100,000 heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals regained their footing. They formed the heavenly court array again and charged towards the 12 golden immortals of Chan School. When the two sides worked together, the 12 golden immortals of Chan School were immediately defeated. Even if they used Khanate numinous treasures, it would be difficult to reverse the situation. At that moment, the 12 golden immortals of Chan School were in danger. Master, Uncle Master, leave quickly. The heavenly court wants to kill me. It has nothing to do with you. If Master and Uncle Masters are implicated because of me, how can Yang Jian live in this world? Seeing that the situation was not right, Yang Jian hurriedly said. In order to save his mother, Yang Jian did not hesitate to offend the heavenly court. It could be seen that he was a filial person. And filial people would not have bad temperaments. How could such a person be willing to see his teachers be implicated by him and attract a fatal disaster? Therefore, seeing that the situation was not right, Yang Jian immediately let the 12 golden immortals of Chan School leave. At the end of the day, Yang Jian was also a pitiful person. His parents might be guilty, but he was definitely innocent. However, being born in such a family was the greatest mistake. Yang Jian's idea was good, but he had overestimated the 12 golden immortals of Chan School. Based on the current situation, they did not have the final say if they wanted to leave. It would depend on whether the heavenly court was willing to let them go. The 12 golden immortals of Chan School were already trapped by the heavenly court. If not for the power of the primeval array, they would have been taken down by the heavenly court. Rumble. The battle continued. The heavenly court had the home advantage. The more they fought, the braver they became. On the other hand, the 12 golden immortals of Chan School were gradually unable to hold on. Moreover, there was still an endless stream of heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals surging out from the South Heaven Gate. They filled the heavenly court's array to increase its power. It was as if they would not stop until they took down the 12 golden immortals of Chan School. The heavenly court's array was an array formation that Fuxi had personally created when he was the heavenly emperor. One could imagine its power. The greatest advantage of this array was that the more people there were, the more powerful it was. If 1,000,000 heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals were to attack together, even a quasi-sage could be suppressed. Now, the heavenly court had mobilized more than 150,000 troops, and there were more heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals on the way to support. In the face of such a powerful force, the defeat of the 12 golden immortals of Chan School was only a matter of time. Sigh. You're already so old. Don't you know how to make others worry? Seeing that the 12 golden immortals of Chan School were about to be suppressed by the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals, the deputy sect master of Chan School, Taoist Randeng, finally could not sit still in the Jade Void Palace of Kunlun Mountain. He sighed and was about to save them. To be honest, Taoist Randeng did not want to make a move. If he made a move, he would definitely offend Hao Tian and the others. He would definitely suffer a calamity in the future. However, if he did not make a move, the Heavenly Lord of Primeval Beginning would not let him have an easy time now. After weighing the pros and cons, the fear of the Heavenly Lord of Primeval Beginning prevailed. Taoist Randeng chose to save them. Rumble. As the void trembled, an ancient ruler quietly arrived and pressed down on the immortal slaying platform. It was the superior grade Khanate spirit treasure, the Qian ruler. It was one of Taoist Randeng's natal spirit treasures and was extremely powerful. When the Qian Kuan ruler pressed down, it was as if a vast Qian Kuan world was pressing down, bringing great pressure to everyone on the immortal slaying platform. Chapter 714. Rumble. The universe was in turmoil as a supreme force attacked. Be it the Chaos Array formation or the Heavenly Court Array formation, they immediately showed signs of instability. Retreat. Taoist Randeng stretched out his hand and pointed. The cosmic ruler trembled slightly and immediately shook off the endless heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals, revealing the 12 golden immortals of Chan school who were trapped inside. Let's go! Not daring to delay, Taoist Randeng activated the cosmic ruler and emitted an immortal light. It swept up the 12 golden immortals of Chan school and was about to take them away. However, where are you going? A huge hand that covered the skies suddenly reached out from the Gauchan heavenly palace and slapped the cosmic ruler fiercely. Boom, boom, boom. After receiving this blow, the cosmic ruler was sent flying. The 12 golden immortals of Chan school who were swept away by it fell from it. Daluo Taoist priests. In the Jade Void Palace, Taoist Randeng's pupils suddenly constricted. He sensed the strength of the person who attacked. Only the Daluo Taoist priests could send the cosmic ruler flying with one strike. Moreover, he was not an ordinary Daluo Taoist priest. The person who attacked was called Yunhua. He was one of the top existences under the North Star Emperor. He was a top expert of the god fiend Dao. His strength had long reached the level of the Daluo Taoist priests, which was the same realm as Taoist Randeng. That's right. Although Taoist Randeng was one of the 3,000 mortal guests of the Purple Cloud Palace, his realm was far from being comparable to his fellow disciples. Taoist Randeng had not even stepped into the Sage-to-be realm, let alone a great divine ability. The Tao ancestors' preaching had ended for an eon, but he was still the Daluo Taoist priests. His strength had not improved at all. Taoist Randeng could be said to be the weakest existence among the 3,000 mortal guests of the Purple Cloud Palace who were still alive. Taoist Randeng was about to become the shame of the celestial sect of wonders. Ignorant junior, how dare you be so rash? Taoist Randeng felt that he had lost face after his weapon was sent flying by a junior. He snorted coldly and raised the cosmic ruler to attack Yunhua, who had just flown out of the Gauchan heavenly palace. Seeing this, Yunhua hurriedly took out a long halberd and waved it to meet the universal ruler. With a bang, the halberd and the universal ruler collided in midair, bursting out. The shocking shockwave shattered the surrounding void. Then Yunhua, together with the long halberd, flew back at a speed faster than when he came. However, the cosmic ruler did not move at all. After one strike, the difference in strength was obvious. Yunhua was no match for Taoist Randeng and was sent flying by the cosmic ruler. Go. After casually defeating Yunhua, Taoist Randeng did not mind. He used the cosmic ruler to sweep up the 12 golden immortals of Chan school and was about to bring them out of the heavenly courts. But at this moment, another unforeseen event occurred. A horsetail whisk swept over from the distance, turning into thousands of divine chains that swept towards the ruler of the universe. It was the Khanate star god, Taibai Jinxing. The horsetail whisk in his hand was called the Taibai horsetail whisk. It was his lifelong numinous treasure. It was nurtured by the Khanate gung metal origin and contained 36 Khanate divine restrictions. It was a superior grade Khanate numinous treasure. The Taibai horsetail whisk looked like a horsetail whisk, but it was actually a Khanate divine sword with astonishing power. The Khanate gung metal chi was the killing aura of the world. Its power was boundless and incomparably sharp. The Taibai horsetail whisk was formed by this chi, so its power could be imagined. It was a top-notch killing treasure in the world. Swoosh, as the horsetail whisk was waved, thousands of silver threads danced like sharp divine swords. They carried a cold sword intent as they slashed at the cosmic ruler, wanting to keep it behind. Another Daluo Taoist priests? There are really many experts in the heavenly courts. Taoist Randeng was not surprised to see another Daluo Taoist priests appear. If the heavenly courts only had so few people, they would not be qualified to command the primordial world. With a thought, Taoist Randeng controlled the cosmic ruler. He messed up the universe and shook the universe, sweeping away the thousands of silver threads that swept over. Taibai Jinxing's attack was ruthless. It could be said that he had used all his strength. However, in front of Taoist Randeng he still could not cause any waves. He was easily repelled by him. Your strength as a Khanate star god is not bad, but you still can't compare to the poor way. As he spoke, Taoist Randang spun the cosmic ruler and stirred up the boundless universe, causing the universe to tremble and sending Tai Bai Jinxing flying. With a flip of his hand, Tai Bai Jinxing was defeated. It would be a mistake to underestimate Taoist Randang because he could not break through to the quasi-saint realm. After all, he was one of the 3,000 guests of the Purple Cloud Palace. He did not lack opportunities and talent. The reason why he could not break through was that his opportunity had not arrived. Because his opportunity had not arrived and he could not step into the quasi-saint realm, Taoist Randang had stayed in the realm of Daluo Jingxian for countless years. If it were anyone else who could not break through, they would have given up long ago. However, Taoist Randang was different. He had never been discouraged and had never given up the opportunity to break through. For this reason, he did not hesitate to give up his face and worship the heavenly Lord Xianxia as his master. Although Taoist Randang's series of efforts did not allow him to successfully step into the quasi-saint realm, it allowed him to lay an unparalleled foundation in the realm of Daluo Taoist priests. To put it bluntly, in the realm of Daluo Taoist priests, there were not many who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Taoist Randang. Even if he could not be invincible in the Daluo realm, he was still one of the top existences. Even ordinary quasi-saint almighties might not be a match for him. After all, in the untainted world, Taoist Randang had been staying in the realm of Daluo Taoist priests. He was the only one who could not break through. This caused him to be far more powerful than others. How could existences like Yun Hua and Tai Bai Jinxing, who had just entered the realm of Daluo Taoist priests, be a match for a wily old fox like Taoist Randang? Even if there were a few more of them, the gap was too big. Taoist Randang could easily defeat them. Kill! After Tai Bai Jinxing's defeat, the Heavenly Court finally realized that it was difficult for them to fight against Taoist Randang alone. Therefore, almost at the same time, a terrifying aura rose from the Heavenly Palace of Haoyan, the North Star, the South Pole, and the Ziwei Heavenly Palace. Then, 4 Daluo Taoist priests appeared and attacked Taoist Randang. At the same time, Yun Hua and Tai Bai Jinxing also climbed up from the void and attacked Taoist Randang together with the 4 Daluo Taoist priests. At this moment, in order to deal with Taoist Randang, the deputy hierarch of the Chan school, the Heavenly Court sent out a total of 6 Daluo Taoist priests. Among these 6 people, 2 were from the Ziwei Heavenly Palace, 2 were from the North Star Heavenly Palace, 1 was from the Luai's Heavenly Palace, and 1 was from the Haotian Heavenly Palace. The 6 Daluo Taoist priests were already a very strong force in the postnatal era when all the Dharma had withered. At this moment, the Heavenly Court sent out 6 Daluo Taoist priests, which really shocked the world. No one would think that these 6 Daluo Taoist priests were all the Daluo Taoist priests of the Heavenly Court. Since the Heavenly Court dared to send out 6 of them, it meant that there were more Daluo Taoist priests hidden in the Heavenly Court. At this moment, under the pressure of the Chan school, the hidden strength of the Heavenly Court finally revealed a corner of the ice peak. At the same time, it also showed its fangs to the world. Even if they couldn't defeat Taoist Randang with 6 against 1, it was more than enough to hold him back. Damn it! In a moment of carelessness, Taoist Randang was swept by the Tai Bai horsetail whisk and couldn't help but stagger. Although this attack did not cause him any harm, it caused him to lose his guard for a moment. Everyone seized the opportunity to attack the universal ruler and beat the 12 golden immortals of the Chan school back into the encirclement of the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals. Oh no! When Taoist Randang saw this, he knew that something was wrong and wanted to save them. However, the 6 of them had finally forced out the 12 golden immortals of the Chan school. How could they let him save them so easily? Therefore, just as Taoist Randang was about to attack, the attacks of the 6 of them immediately became intense. That reckless aura forced Taoist Randang to give up on saving them and focus on defense. Kill! Knowing that this was a rare opportunity, the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals immediately perked up and surrounded the 12 golden immortals of the Chan school with all their might, intending to take them down in the shortest time possible. For a moment, the battle became more and more urgent. It was as if the entire heavenly court had become a battlefield. Where was the Jade Pool? This was the only great mystical ability user in the heavenly court. She had not appeared since the start of the battle, as if she did not care about this matter at all. Strange. Exceptionally strange. Why couldn't the Jade Pool attack? Because she was in big trouble. At this moment in the Jade Pool, the Heavenly Empress, Jade Pool, was blocked at the door of her house. It was a Taoist priest in a Taoist robe. He had a kind face and held a worn-out horsetail whisk in his hand. He stood quietly outside the Jade Pool, without a trace of aura bursting out of his body. Even so, the Jade Pool looked as if she was facing a great enemy. Her whole body was tense as she stared at the Taoist priest in front of her, not daring to move at all. Since returning from the tribulation with Haotian, the Jade Pool's strength had improved greatly. Although it was not as exaggerated as Haotian, who had directly stepped into the half-step primordial chaos realm, she had also stepped into the realm of sage-to-be perfection. She could be called a top great mystical ability user. However, the Jade Pool with such strength showed an expression of defeat in front of the Taoist priest who looked like a mortal in front of her. From this, it could be seen that the Taoist priest was very powerful. He was definitely a half-step primordial chaos realm existence, or even stronger. After a moment of silence, the Jade Pool asked, "Fellow Taoist, where did you come from and what do you want?" Where did this master in front of her come from? Judging by his clothes, he was obviously a member of the Xian sect. However, after thinking for a long time in her heart, she could not recognize the origin of this Taoist priest. She could not help but feel surprised. After all, there was no one in the Xian sect that the Jade Pool did not know. The fact that she could not recognize him was enough to show how mysterious this person was. In the past, when the 3,000 mortal guests went to the Purple Cloud Palace to listen to the Tao, it was Haotian and the Jade Pool who stood guard outside the door. Therefore, as long as someone entered the Purple Cloud Palace, they must meet Haotian and the Jade Pool face to face. Therefore, the two of them remembered all the 3,000 mortal guests. Therefore, the Jade Pool could be sure that there was no such person in the Xian sect. Poor Wei Bodhi from the west. Today, I came here to settle a karma here. The Taoist priest smiled and replied. Bodhi. Hearing this, the Jade Pool's pupils shrank. She had already understood the origin of the person in front of her and knew that today's matter could not be settled peacefully. In the entire West, there were only two great mystical ability users, Jin and Zhuanti. The Taoist priest in front of her was called Bodhi, so his origin was very obvious. He was Saint Zhuanti, or rather his good corpse. How does fellow Taoist Bodhi want to settle the karma? Taking a deep breath, the Jade Pool asked very cautiously. At the same time, she was ready to fight. What kind of karma could Taoist Zhuanti come here for? It was nothing more than the matter of the three emperors of the heavenly court trampling on the western sacred ground, Mount Meru. The mountain gate was destroyed, and the foundation was destroyed. If it were anyone else, they would not be able to take this lying down. It was normal for Saint Zhuanti to come to take revenge on the heavenly court. Fellow Taoist, please don't worry. Poor Wei came here today not for the matter of Mount Meru, but for the poor disciple of poor Wei. Seeing that the Jade Pool was a little nervous, Taoist Bodhi explained with a smile. The destruction of Mount Meru was caused by the three great emperors, Haotian, Ziwei, and Gaochen. Although Taoist Zhuanti was a little shameless, he would not blame the Jade Pool for this matter. On the one hand, he could not afford to lose face, but the pride in his heart did not allow him to do so. Since he wanted to take revenge, then every injustice had its perpetrator, and every debt had its debtor. There was no need to look for other people's family members. If this spread out, wouldn't it mean that Saint Zhuanti was afraid of Haotian? It did not matter if he was afraid of Tai. After all, everyone was afraid of him, and Saint Zhuanti was not the only one. Therefore, he had no pressure to use the 10 golden crows to deal with Tai. If he was afraid of Haotian, Zhuanti really could not afford to lose face. Therefore, Zhuanti would not attack the Jade Pool. He did not come for the destruction of Mount Meru, but for the fake Yaoji. For some reason, the fake Yaoji's identity had been completely exposed. Everyone knew that she was from the Western sect. For this reason, when the heavenly court wanted to kill her, Saint Zhuanti had to save her. Otherwise, if the Western sect watched its disciple be killed by outsiders, the cohesion of the Western sect would be scattered. A sect that could not even protect its own disciple, even if it was the orthodoxy of a saint, no one would join it. Therefore, no matter what, Xuandi had to save the fake Yaoji. With his identity, it was not appropriate for him to come to the heavenly court in person. For this reason, he specially sent his good corpse, Taoist Bodhi, to deal with this matter. Even if the 3 corpses of a saint were not as strong as the original body, they were still the top existences in the world, second only to the saints. There were not many people in the primordial world who could defeat them. The Jade Pool was not an exception. Therefore, Taoist Bodhi alone was enough to save the fake Yaoji, Yang Jian, and her son. In fact, Taoist Bodhi did not need to do anything. He only needed to stop the Jade Pool. He did not need to worry about the rest. The Chan sect would naturally do it for him and bring her out intact. It was precisely because Taoist Bodhi was blocking the way that the Jade Pool had not shown up since the battle. It was not that she was unwilling, but that she could not. Without the help of Taoist Randang, the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect gradually lost to the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals. Soon, they were forced into a desperate situation. Sigh. At the critical moment of the battle, a sudden sigh attracted everyone's attention. Then, a Taoist wearing a feather robe and a star crown appeared in the field, ignoring all the arrays. Chapter 7:15. It's time for this farce to end. No one knew where that Taoist came from, but his tone was frightening. He called the matter of the 12 golden immortals of Chan school a farce and threatened to resolve it. Kill! At that moment, the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals were already in a frenzy. When they saw someone interfering in the battle, they did not ask about his background and directly charged forward. From the looks of it, it was obvious that they wanted to kill that Taoist and the 12 golden immortals of Chan school together. Shut up! When the Taoist saw the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals charging over, he could not help but frown. A displeased expression appeared on his face. Then he waved his hand impatiently. Boom! Immediately, a vast aura rose from his body and spread out in all directions with him as the center. Clang, clang, clang. The sound of weapons falling could be heard. It was the group of heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals who could not withstand this aura. Their bodies trembled non-stop, so much so that they could not hold the weapons in their hands firmly and fell to the ground. Those who could not perform well even prostrated on the ground as if they were worshipping a supreme god. Master! In a trance, the 12 golden immortals of Chan school seemed to see the shadow of the heavenly lord of primordial beginning on that Taoist and could not help but shout. Hiss! The heavenly lord of primordial beginning! At the side, the 6 Daluo Taoist priests who were fighting with Taoist Randang could not help but gasp in shock when they heard the words of the 12 golden immortals of Chan school. That person is the heavenly lord of primordial beginning? It can't be. For such a small matter, the heavenly lord of primordial beginning, who is an extremely prideful saint, actually personally took action? It shouldn't be, right? In addition, it was not that they had never seen the portrait of the heavenly lord of primordial beginning. Although this person's appearance was somewhat similar to the heavenly lord of primordial beginning, he was obviously not the heavenly lord of primordial beginning. However, the 12 golden immortals of Chan school could not possibly mistake their own master, the 6 Taoist priests who were frightened by the shouts of the 12 golden immortals of Chan school no longer had the intention to fight with Taoist Randang. After fighting him head-on, they retreated to the side. May I ask where you are from, and why are you here? Tai Bai Jingxing tidied up his clothes that were slightly messy due to the continuous battles. He took a step forward and asked the Taoist. He. Poor Wei Taoist Yu Qing came from Kunlun Mountain's Jade Mirage Palace. Today, I am here to bring those unfilial disciples home. The Taoist chuckled and told him his origin. Taoist Yu Qing. Everyone was shocked when they heard this name. The person who came was indeed Heavenly Lord Xianxia. Although he didn't know why his appearance changed, he thought that no one in the untainted land dared to use the name of Taoist Yu Qing except for Heavenly Lord Xianxia. Not to mention impersonating him. If he pretended to be a saint, wouldn't that be suicide? Fellow Taoist Yu Qing, you sure are impressive. Coming to the heavenly court to show off, do you really think the heavenly court is your Kunlun mountain? At this time, Yao Qi finally showed herself and walked out of the Jade Lake. He had to show up. At this time, in the heavenly court, except for him, no one could talk to Taoist Yu Qing. The others didn't have enough status. And Bodhi Taoist didn't stop him, because there was no need to. The Jade Lake was already unable to deal with Taoist Bodhi, let alone Taoist Yu Qing, who was even stronger. If the two of them worked together, they could even fight Hao Yin. Poor Wei greets fellow Taoist Yao Qi. Seeing Yao Qi come, Taoist Yu Qing stepped forward and bowed. If Heavenly Lord Yuanshi was here, he naturally wouldn't take Yao Qi seriously. But the current Taoist Yu Qing wasn't the real Heavenly Lord Yuanshi, but an existence like Bodhi Taoist, a good corpse that was cut off for Heavenly Lord Yuanshi. Fellow Taoist, I'm afraid it won't be easy for you to take away the disciples today. Your disciples tried to kidnap the prisoners of the heavenly court in broad daylight and injured countless heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals. This is equivalent to humiliating the heavenly court in front of all living beings in the three realms. If you don't give the heavenly court an explanation today, you won't be able to take this disciple away. Yao Qi said bluntly to Taoist Yu Qing. The dissatisfaction in her words could be felt even through the screen. It's just a joke between the younger generation. Why do you have to take it to heart, fellow Taoist Yao Qi? Taoist Yu Qing said lightly in the face of the angry Yao Qi. Looking at his expression, it wasn't that he didn't realize the impact of this matter on the heavenly court, but that he didn't take the heavenly court seriously at all. You? Yao Qi was furious. She pointed at Taoist Yu Qing and couldn't say anything. After a long time, she calmed down. Goddess, if Taoist Yu Qing wants to take away the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect, then let him take them away. On the contrary, even if we really capture the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect, we can't do anything to them. After seeing Yao Qi calm down, Tai Bai Jinxing stepped forward and whispered. In fact, letting the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect leave was the best choice for the heavenly court. Otherwise, what could they do even if they captured them? Could they kill them? In the end, how to deal with them was also a problem. It was better to take this opportunity to release the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect and sell a favor to the primeval Lord of Heaven. In that case, Tai Bai Jinxing, do as you see fit. Yao Qi thought about it and felt that it made sense. However, she had said too much earlier. Now that she was asked to change her words, she was a little embarrassed. She could only let Tai Bai Jinxing do as he saw fit. Yes, Tai Bai Jinxing. Tai Bai Jinxing was a smart person. When he heard Yao Qi's words, he knew that she agreed. However, he couldn't lose face and was unwilling to say this. Therefore, he left this matter to him. With a plan in mind, Tai Bai Jinxing winked at the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals below, indicating that they should make way so that the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect could leave. In fact, after seeing Taoist Yu Qing appear, the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals lost their fighting spirit and didn't dare to continue to attack. Now that they had received Tai Bai Jinxing's signal, it was exactly what they wanted. Therefore, soon, the group of heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals wanted to retreat to both sides and make way. Seeing that their master had come, the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect were full of confidence again. They no longer looked like they were in a sorry state. Instead, they swaggered through the passage and walked toward Taoist Yu Qing. Seeing this, although everyone's face was a little ugly, they didn't say anything. After a while, the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect came in front of Taoist Yu Qing. After greeting him one by one, they silently retreated behind him. Taoist Yu Qing, since you have received your disciple, why don't you leave? Seeing that Taoist Yu Qing still hadn't left after she released his disciple, Yao Qi couldn't help but frown and ask. Poor Wei has received his disciple, but he hasn't received his disciple yet. So, how can he leave? Shaking his head, Taoist Yu Qing said with an insatiable desire. Taoist Yu Qing, do you really think that poor Wei is afraid of you? It's not enough to release your disciple, and now you want to release your disciple? You've gone too far. This time, Yao Qi was really angry. There was still a reason to release the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect, but if Yang Jian and his mother were released, the Heavenly Court's face would be completely lost. From now on, the Heavenly Court would become the laughingstock of the untainted land and the object of ridicule of all living beings. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was a great shame. So, how could Yao Qi agree to release them? She couldn't even fall out with him. With anger rising in her heart, Yao Qi flashed directly to the fake Yaoji and Yang Jian's mother and son, and restrained them. If you want to save them, you can, but first over the dead body of poor Wei. After suppressing the mother and son with a flip of her hand, Yao Qi looked back at Taoist Bodhi and Taoist Yuqing and said with a resolute face. In a one-on-one fight, Yao Qi might not be a match for them, let alone 1 against 2. But Yao Qi really didn't believe that the two dared to kill her in order to save people. Not to mention her identity as the Heavenly Queen of Jade Lake. Her identity as the child of Tao ancestor Hongjun was enough to make Taoist Yuqing not dare to kill her. In order to save your grand disciple, you killed your own master's Taoist child, and it was even under the circumstances that you were in the wrong. Do you really think that Tao ancestor Hongjun is so weak that he won't be angry? Alas. Fellow Taoist, why are you doing this? With a sigh, Taoist Yuqing made a move. A jade-colored immortal light fell and turned into a white light, rolling toward Yang Jian and the fake Yaoji. At the same time, on the other side, Taoist Bodhi's body suddenly bloomed with hundreds of millions of fine lights, which hit Yao Qi overwhelmingly, forcing her to defend with all her strength. Damn it! Seeing that Taoist Yuqing's immortal light was about to sweep away Yang Jian and his mother, a cold light flashed in Yao Qi's eyes, and she had the intention to kill. After that, she didn't do anything, but Yang Jian and his mother directly exploded into 2 clouds of blood mist, completely losing their lives. Yao Qi was a great medium in the great perfection of sage-to-be. If she wanted to kill 2 little Tai Jingxian cultivators, wasn't it just a matter of a thought? She could kill Yang Jian and his mother in an instant with just a thought, and not even their bones would be left. Fellow Taoist, don't make a futile struggle. You can't kill them in front of the poor Wei. After seeing Yang Jian and his mother being killed by Yao Qi, Taoist Yuqing's expression didn't change at all, and he just said coldly. Then he waved his big sleeve, and a force that could turn everything upside down appeared, twisting yin and yang and reversing life and death, making Yang Jian and his mother appear in this world again. This was the reversal of yin and yang of the Big Dipper 36 superpowers. The Big Dipper 36 skills, after being performed by a saint, finally showed its invincible power. It reversed black and white, mixed up yin and yang, and crossed the boundary of life and death to resurrect Yang Jian and his mother, who were killed by Yao Qi. Kill! Yao Qi was shocked and angry. She pulled out the silver hairpin in her hair and waved it in the air, drawing a vast river of stars, which rushed toward Yang Jian and his mother. The silver hairpin was a protective spiritual treasure given to Yao Qi by the Taoist ancestor. It was of the highest quality, and its power was shocking. Under normal circumstances, a gentle wave from Yao Qi could turn 1,000,000 Yang Jian into ashes in an instant, let alone a single Yang Jian. But now, under the protection of Taoist Yuqing, Yao Qi's attack couldn't hurt Yang Jian and his mother at all. Taoist Yuqing formed a seal with one hand and pointed at the jade pool. The vast river of stars immediately rolled back and rushed toward the jade pool at a faster and stronger speed. This was called Wind and Fire Return. It was one of the Big Dipper 36 superpowers, and it had the power to reverse the enemy's attack. Puff! Just as Yao Qi was thinking about killing Yang Jian and his mother, Bodhi Taoist's attack came and hit her. It broke her protective phoenix chi and sent her flying, crashing into the river of stars. After being hit twice in a row, Yao Qi spat out a mouthful of blood. She was seriously injured. Whoosh! Taking advantage of Yao Qi's injury, Taoist Yuqing rolled up the jade pure celestial light to save Yang Jian and his mother. But at this moment, a horsetail whisk suddenly rushed out and took Yang Jian's mother away, leaving only Yang Jian, who was taken away by the jade pure celestial light. Taoist Yuqing looked up and saw that it was Bodhi Taoist who took Yang Jian's mother away. What are you doing? Taoist Yuqing narrowed his eyes and asked expressionlessly. You want to save your grand disciple, while the poor Wei wants to save her disciple. What's there to be confused about? Taoist Subhuti laughed and asked, pretending that he didn't know anything. Yang Jian was a third-generation disciple of the Chan sect, but the fake Yaoji was also a disciple of the Western sect. It was completely reasonable for Bodhi Taoist to save her. However, Yang Jian's mother fell into the hands of the Western sect. This might not be a good thing for him. But now was not the time to discuss this, because they were in trouble. Yao Qi came back to her senses. Seeing that Yang Jian and his mother had been rescued, she exploded. She drew the heavenly quartz qi into her body and brazenly attacked the two. For a moment, Yao Qi's aura skyrocketed and directly entered the origin realm. Kill! Seeing this, Yuqing and Bodhi did not dare to hold back. They each used all their strength and drew the support of their own body's strength. Like Yao Qi, they entered the origin realm and faced her together. Boom! At this moment, Yao Qi faced Yuqing and Bodhi head-on. The three origin realm forces collided fiercely, shaking the world and disturbing the universe. After a single blow, the outcome was decided. Yao Qi was no match for the combined power of the two. Not only was she sent flying, but even the heavenly quartz qi was blasted out and fell from the origin realm. With just one blow, Yao Qi had completely lost the ability to fight again. Let's go! After defeating Yao Qi, Taoist Yuqing and Bodhi Taoist did not have the slightest bit of pride on their faces. Instead, they looked solemn. They grabbed the disciples beside them and were about to leave. However, they could not leave. Yao Qi's defeat caused the heavenly quartz qi to be in turmoil, which awakened the three great emperors who were closely related to it. The Jade Emperor, the Great Emperor of Ziwei, and the Great Emperor of the South Pole. Yuanshi, Zhuanti, how dare you do this? As soon as he opened his eyes, Hao Tian saw Yao Qi, who was seriously injured and unconscious, as well as Taoist Yuqing and Bodhi Taoist who were about to leave. Chapter 716. Killing Intent. Uncontrollable killing intent rose in Hao Tian's heart, and then he directly attacked. Roar! With a loud dragon roar, the heavenly quartz lux suddenly turned into a divine dragon and flew out from the top of Hao Tian's head. It meandered for tens of thousands of miles and roared as it pounced on Bodhi Taoist. At the same time, on the other side of the heaven realm, in the boundless starry sky, Feng Zichen also ignored his injuries and forcefully activated the Galaxy Cosmic Light Array, brazenly attacking Taoist Yuqing. Whoosh! The starlight was like rain, turning into a huge waterfall, cutting through the sky and sweeping toward Taoist Yuqing and the 12 golden immortals. Without a doubt, Feng Zichen and Hao Tian's attacks belonged to the primordial chaos level, and it was the highest primordial chaos power. Because, in anger, they used the power of rank. If it were Heavenly Lord Yuanshi and Saint Zhuanti here, it would not be difficult for them to block this attack. Because they could mobilize the power of the Heavenly Way. This was a power that was not inferior to the power of rank at all, or even stronger. But the problem was that Taoist Yuqing and Bodhi Taoist were not Heavenly Lord Yuanshi and Saint Zhuanti. They were only the good corpses of the two. It was already the limit for them to be able to exert the power of the primordial chaos level. It was completely impossible for them to mobilize the power of the Heavenly Way. Mobilizing the power of the Heavenly Way was the privilege of saints. Other than the saints themselves, even their incarnations could not do this. What if they could not block the attacks of Feng Zichen and Hao Tian? It was simple, they could only die. Rumble! The divine dragon roared and swallowed Bodhi Taoist and the fake Yaoji in his hand. The starlight was vast and swept everything, drowning Taoist Yuqing, the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect, and Yang Jian. Sacrifice! At the moment of life and death, Taoist Yuqing and Bodhi Taoist actually made the same choice. The two of them sacrificed themselves without hesitation in exchange for a huge power to protect their disciples. From the moment Feng Zichen and Hao Tian woke up, Taoist Yuqing and Taoist Bodhi knew that the two of them were doomed to die. Since they were going to die anyway, they naturally had to choose a more valuable death. For example, using their own fall in exchange for a chance of survival for their disciples. They could die, but their disciples could not. Otherwise, wouldn't their trip be in vain? Rumble. The two sacred arts exploded at the same time. The terrifying power spread out, and the heaven and earth stopped moving at this moment. After everything calmed down, Taoist Yu Qing and Taoist Bodhi were no longer in the world. Their disciples, on the other hand, were unscathed because they risked their lives to protect them. How could this be? Master, even though the truth had already happened in front of their eyes, the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect still could not believe that their master had fallen in front of them. He believed that this experience would leave an indelible mark on them, and they would learn to respect him. Reverence for the strong. The 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect should restrain themselves. They were quite unscrupulous and did not know what reverence was. That was a disaster. In the untainted land, the name of a saint was not omnipotent. Many existences would not give face to a saint. But strength could. As long as one was strong enough, one could be omnipotent. Just as the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect and the fake Yaoji were stunned, two big hands suddenly reached out from the direction of Kunlun Mountain and the west, grabbed them and left. It was the heavenly lord of the origin and Saint Xuanti who took action to save their disciples. They had paid such a high price, and their good corpses were destroyed for this. If they could not save their disciples, they would suffer a great loss. You're courting death. Seeing this, Feng Zichen and Haoyan were even more furious. They stood up directly, and the monstrous aura spread out. The whole untainted land shook because of it, and a terrifying vision appeared as if it was the end of the world. Kill! The two of them shouted in unison. The whole heavenly court, and even the whole 33 heavens, and the boundless starry sky shook together. Then, a supreme force spread out and condensed on Feng Zichen and Haoyan. It gradually condensed into one, and then chased after the two giant hands. Rumble! The two forces tore through the layers of space and chased after the giant hand. The heavenly lord of the origin and Saint Xuanti were very fast. They almost did not give Feng Zichen and Haoyan time to react before they saved their disciples. However, although they were fast, Feng Zichen and Hao Tian were not slow either. Their palms had just returned to Kunlun Mountain and Meru Mountain when the two supreme forces arrived. Then, without hesitation, they smashed down fiercely. How dare you! How dare you! This time, it was the heavenly lord of the origin and Saint Xuanti's turn to be angry. This was their dojo. If it was hit by this magical power of the two, what would be left? It would probably shatter directly. In their anger, the two of them attacked almost without holding back. On Kunlun Mountain, the Trigem Jade Rui rose into the air and evolved the Tao of heaven, earth, and man. It separated the three lights, separated water, fire, and wind, and developed essence, chi, and spirit. It brazenly faced the terrifying wave from the heavenly court. On the newly rebuilt Meru Mountain, the Tree of Seven Wonders spanned between heaven and earth. It developed the mystery of yin and yang and the 5 elements. It bloomed with light and covered the entire Meru Mountain, protecting it firmly. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, a terrifying wave of energy blasted towards Mount Kunlun and Mount Meru. Bang! After the fierce confrontation, although Kunlun Mountain and Meru Mountain were fine, the magic treasures protecting them were severely damaged. Crack, crack. There was a shattering sound, and shocking cracks appeared on the Tree of Seven Wonders and the Trigem Jade Rui at the same time. Then, a shocking scene happened. The two magic treasures, which could be called the Tao-proving treasures of the saints, were shattered one after another, turning into fragments that scattered into the untainted land and disappeared. It was the heavenly lord of the origin and Saint Xuanti's fault for underestimating their enemy. Although the Tree of Seven Wonders and the Trigem Jade Rui were strong, they were only supreme-grade primordial spirit treasures and not primordial cardinal treasures. How could they resist the power of Feng Zichen and Haoyan? It should be known that that attack was launched by the power of the entire heaven realm and the boundless starry sky. Its power was no weaker than the full-strength attack of a 12th heaven of Hunyuan expert. Even Dao ancestor Hongjun did not dare to take such a powerful attack lightly. How could the Heavenly Lord of the Origin and Saint Xuanti easily block it? The destruction of the magic treasures was light. It was thanks to their quick reaction that they did not destroy Meru Mountain and Kunlun Mountain together. They knew to use primordial cardinal treasures to block it or ask another saint for help. Hiss! This scene sent chills down the spines of those powerful beings who were watching the show, and they all sucked in a breath of cold air. Was the world going to change? This should be the first time that the two saints had suffered such a big loss. Although they saved their own disciples, the loss was too great. Not only was the good corpse destroyed, but even the Dao proving treasures were destroyed. It was really a heavy loss. Puff! The Dao proving treasures were destroyed. The Heavenly Lord of the Origin and Saint Xuanti immediately suffered a backlash and spat out a large mouthful of blood. It was obvious that he had suffered serious injuries. At the same time, Feng Zichen and Haoyan in the Heaven Realm were not feeling well either. Forcibly activating the power of the Heaven Realm and the boundless starry sky was undoubtedly a huge burden for them, who were already seriously injured. It made their injuries even more serious. However, compared with the results they achieved, the price they paid was undoubtedly worth it. The Dao proving treasures were destroyed, the good corpse was destroyed, and they were seriously injured. This time, the Heavenly Lord of the Origin and Saint Xuanti could be said to have lost face in front of everyone. As for the Heavenly Court, they had also used this battle to recover some of their lost dignity. You're courting death. After suffering such a huge loss, how could the Heavenly Lord of the Origin and Saint Xuanti let it go? Immediately, the two of them used their full strength. The Heavenly Lord of the Origin took out the Panga banner, while Saint Xuanti revealed his true body. He wanted to charge towards the Heavenly Court to save some face. However, at this moment, the Heavenly Dao made its move. In the blink of an eye, an incomparably grand and noble aura descended. In the blink of an eye, it enveloped the entire Kunlun Mountain and Mount Meru. Then, the Panga banner trembled for a moment before slowly retreating. The huge connate Bodhi tree that stood on Mount Meru also slowly transformed into a human form. To the Heavenly Dao, it was time for this farce to end. If this continued, it would not be the face of the Heavenly Emperor and the saints, but the Heavenly Dao. They are all figures who have achieved the Dao, but they are like children in the human world. How can they make such a huge joke in front of everyone? How can they do this? Dao ancestor Hongjun's ethereal voice suddenly sounded in the world, causing everyone's expressions to change drastically. Master, teacher, I know my mistake. Hearing that, the Heavenly Lord of the Origin and Saint Xuanti hurriedly admitted their mistakes. On the other side, Haoyan did the same. As for Feng Zichen, he was the younger brother of the Heavenly Dao. His status was extremely noble. If he gave Dao ancestor Hongjun face, it would be fine to call him Dao ancestor. However, if he did not give Dao ancestor Hongjun face, he would not even be called Dao ancestor. Seeing Dao ancestor Hongjun appear, Feng Zichen snorted coldly without giving him face. He turned around and returned to the boundless starry sky to continue healing. It was unknown whether Dao ancestor Hongjun ignored him or had left long ago. In short, after reprimanding them, there was no sound. Although the Heavenly Lord of the Origin and Saint Xuanti were still very dissatisfied with Haoyan and Feng Zichen. However, after being reprimanded by Dao ancestor Hongjun, they had no choice but to suppress their dissatisfaction and temporarily put this matter behind them. After all, they could not afford to offend Dao ancestor Hongjun. The more powerful an existence was, the more they could understand how terrifying Dao ancestor Hongjun was. It could be described as unimaginable. The Heavenly Lord of the Origin and Saint Xuanti had finally let go of this matter. After all, they were the ones who were in the wrong in this matter. If the matter was blown up and Dao ancestor Hongjun was involved, their faces would not look good. However, they had let it go, but there was someone who could not. That was Haoyan. The matter of robbing the execution ground had already made him feel extremely aggrieved. In addition, Yao Qi was seriously injured by the Heavenly Lord of the Origin and Saint Xuanti. This undoubtedly made Haotian even angrier. When Haotian opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was Yao Qi lying on the ground with serious injuries and falling in front of him. How could he not have been in a bad mood? In short, at that moment, Haotian went crazy. Ignoring his injuries, he forcefully activated the origin power of the heaven realm to kill the two of them. Feng Zichen felt the madness in Haotian's heart, so he went crazy with him. He also ignored his injuries and activated the boundless starry sky power. Haotian was angry, especially when he looked at the seriously injured Yao Qi in front of him. The anger in his heart directly rose to the level of hatred. For this reason, after seeing that Tao ancestor Hongjun only reprimanded the heavenly lord of the origin and Saint Juanti and did not give any actual punishment, the more Haotian thought about it, the angrier he became. As the saying goes, the most terrifying thing is to force an honest person into a corner. This time, Haotian was really forced into a corner and perfectly demonstrated this point. After that, Haotian ignored his injuries and carried Yao Qi, who was also seriously injured, directly broke through the void, walked into the chaos outside the sky, and went to the Purple Cloud Palace. The apotheosis tribulation begins from here. Looking at Haotian and Yao Qi, who were heading to the Purple Cloud Palace, Feng Zichen could not help but sigh. Of course, he knew the purpose of Haotian's visit. Obviously, he was going to complain and complain. However, with Haotian's visit, the apotheosis tribulation was about to begin. As for him, it was time for him to make preparations. The chaos outside the sky was boundless and unimaginably vast. It was deeper and more vast than the boundless starry sky. After Haotian and Yao Qi arrived here, they directly returned to the form of Taoist children. Following the feeling in their hearts, they wandered around the vast chaos, hoping to find the location of the Purple Cloud Palace. As the Taoist field of the Tao ancestor, the Purple Cloud Palace was a very magical place. It did not exist in the past, the future, or the present. It was like a shadow, wandering outside of time and space, not existing in any place in the world. Unless your strength was close to, or even comparable to or surpassing Tao ancestor Hongjun, otherwise, without his permission, no matter how you searched the entire chaos outside the sky, you would not be able to find any trace of the Purple Cloud Palace. After all, they were his children. Tao ancestor Hongjun still remembered their old friendship and opened the door of convenience for Haotian and Yao Qi. Not long after Haotian and Yao Qi walked in the chaos outside the sky, the Purple Cloud Palace appeared in front of them. Seeing this, Haotian was overjoyed and walked over. "Teacher, please uphold justice for me?" As soon as he entered the hall, Haotian bowed and said. As he spoke, he did not forget to place Yao Qi, who was seriously injured and unconscious, in front of Tao ancestor Hongjun. Sigh. Looking at Yao Qi in front of him, Tao ancestor Hongjun could not help but sigh heavily. There was obvious displeasure on his face. P.S. Brothers who are reading pirated copies, or brothers who are reading books on other websites, please support them. The average subscription has begun to drop. Chapter 717. It was normal for Tao ancestor Hongjun to be unhappy. Were the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning and Saint Juanti fighting the Jade Pool? No, they were slapping Tao ancestor Hongjun's face. No matter what, the person who asked Haotian and the Jade Pool to be the Heavenly Emperor and Heavenly Empress was Tao ancestor Hongjun. In other words, the Jade Pool and Haotian were Tao ancestor Hongjun's people. The saints were bullying the two of them. It was obvious that they did not take Tao ancestor Hongjun seriously. As long as they had a trace of Tao ancestor Hongjun in their eyes, they would not be so ruthless to the Jade Pool. Thinking of this, how could Tao ancestor Hongjun be happy? The saints wanted face, but could it be that Tao ancestor Hongjun did not want face? With this thought in mind, Tao ancestor Hongjun's expression could not help but turn uglier. Suppressing the unhappiness in his heart, Tao ancestor Hongjun looked at Haotian in front of him and said, "I've wronged you all these years." As he spoke, he waved the horsetail whisk in his hand and swept out a breeze towards Haotian and the Jade Pool below. As the breeze blew past, Haotian felt a rich power of creation rise from his body. In the blink of an eye, his injuries were healed. Hao Qian did not have time to be happy. He hurriedly looked at the jade pool in front of him. Seeing that his face was gradually recovering and his aura was gradually calming down, Hao Qian was relieved and said respectfully to the Tao ancestor, "Thank you for your help, teacher." After saying that, Hao Qian bowed to Tao ancestor Hongjun. However, he did not bow down. Halfway through, he was stopped by Tao ancestor Hongjun. "Enough, you're already the heavenly emperor. How can you be like before?" A dignified supreme of heaven and earth bowed to an old man like the poor Wei. If word got out, what would it look like? Don't do this in the future. Tao ancestor Hongjun pretended to be angry as he held up Hao Qian with his horsetail whisk. "Yes, teacher. Hao Qian will remember." Seeing Tao ancestor Hongjun like this, Hao Qian did not insist and bowed slightly. Only then did Tao ancestor Hongjun's expression relax. "Poor Wei already knows why you're here. All these years, those senior brothers of yours have indeed gone too far. Even poor Wei is unable to tolerate it. It's just that if you don't look for poor Wei won't stand up for you, lest others say she's biased. However, since you're here today, the poor Wei has a reason to make a decision for you." After Hao Yin calmed down, Tao ancestor Hongjun said slowly. However, what he said made Hao Tian blush. It turned out that it was not that Tao ancestor Hongjun was unwilling to help Hao Qian, but that Hao Qian did not take the initiative to speak. If Hao Qian did not speak, how would Tao ancestor Hongjun know that he had been wronged? Tao ancestor Hongjun might think that Hao Tian did not retaliate because he was holding back something bad and numbing the other party. He was prepared to ruthlessly backstab the other party at the crucial moment. If that was the case, wouldn't Tao ancestor Hongjun ruin Hao Yan's matter if he interfered rashly? It was precisely because of this that even though he knew that Hao Yan had been wronged, Tao ancestor Hongjun did not help. If you didn't say anything after being wronged, who would be wronged if not you? Could it be that you still expect the other party to pity you? Ridiculous. People like you are bullied. Hao Qian was really unable to raise his head because of Tao ancestor Hongjun's words. All these years, it was precisely because of his weakness that the saint had bullied him even more. If he had acted a little tougher or directly ran to the Purple Cloud Palace to complain, the saint would definitely not have dared to look down on him. "I'm sorry, teacher." Hao Qian knows his mistake. It was only at this moment that Hao Qian finally understood that he was different from Di Jun. He was someone with a backer. Even if he directly fell out with the saint could not do anything to him. That was because he was Tao ancestor Hongjun's person. Bullying him was equivalent to slapping Tao ancestor Hongjun's face. This was also the reason why Tao ancestor Hongjun supported Hao Yin as the heavenly emperor back then. He was standing up for Hao Yin and clearly telling the saints that Hao Yin was his person. Unfortunately, he did not know what was going on with Hao Yin. After so many years, he still could not figure out Tao ancestor Hongjun's meaning. He had been bullied for so many years for nothing. Therefore, in a sense, most of the grievances that Hao Yin had suffered over the years were his own fault. Have you really thought it through? If you have, take Yao Qi to the side and wait. Let's see how poor Wei will get an explanation for you. Tao ancestor Hongjun glared at Hao Qian angrily and said. Seeing this, Hao Qian smiled embarrassedly and pulled Yao Qi, who had just woken up with a confused expression, to the side. Come to the Purple Cloud Palace quickly. With a thought from Tao ancestor Hongjun, his dignified voice immediately sounded in the ears of the 6 saints. Hearing this, the 6 saints were shocked at first. Then, they did not dare to delay and hurriedly ran to the Purple Cloud Palace. However, other than the 6 saints, there was another person who was called to the Purple Cloud Palace by Tao ancestor Hongjun. That was Feng Zichen. It was not surprising that the 6 saints were called to the Purple Cloud Palace. After all, this matter was related to them. But the strange thing was, why did the Tao ancestor call Feng Zichen? In this regard, Feng Zichen was also very puzzled. How could the matter of the apotheosis have anything to do with him? Although there were 365 deity positions on the apotheosis list, the same number as Zhouxing. But these deity positions really had nothing to do with Zhouxing. The power of the deity positions of the heavenly cycle was the embodiment of the power of the heavenly gods. It could either rely on heaven and earth, or rely on rules, or even rely on the power of incense and wish. But it definitely did not come from Zhouxing. Because, if not for Feng Zichen, Zhouxing would have been destroyed in the final battle between the liches and demons. In his previous life, he did not even Zhouxing. How could the righteous gods of the heavenly court borrow the power of Zhouxing? Wasn't this happy? Therefore, the position of the righteous gods of the heavenly court had nothing to do with Zhouxing. If that was the case, then the purpose of Dao ancestor Hongjun inviting him to the Purple Cloud Palace was somewhat intriguing. However, no matter what Dao ancestor Hongjun's purpose was, Feng Zichen had to go. He could not guess anything here, but when he reached the Purple Cloud Palace, he would naturally understand. With this thought in mind, Feng Zichen directly soared into the sky and entered the chaos beyond the heavens after the 6 saints. As soon as he entered the Purple Cloud Palace, the heavenly lord of primordial beginning saw Hao Tian sitting at the side. In an instant, he understood why Dao ancestor Hongjun had called them over. This fellow must have come to complain. Thinking of this, the heavenly lord of primordial beginning felt a surge of anger rising in his heart. However, he also knew that this was the Purple Cloud Palace, not a place for him to behave atrociously. Therefore, the heavenly lord of primordial beginning suppressed his anger and found his seat to sit down. He turned his head and did not look at Hao Tian. At the same time, he was also thinking about how to repay Hao Tian when he went out. On the other side, Saint Juan Ti, who had the same thoughts as the heavenly lord of primordial beginning, also sat in his seat expressionlessly. He was silently thinking about how to deal with Hao Tian. Not long after the 6 saints took their seats, Feng Zichen also hurried over. After glancing around the hall, he found a seat beside Yu Haoyan and sat down. When everyone had arrived, Dao ancestor Hongjun appeared and sat at the head of the table. Today, there are disciples of the celestial sect of wonders who do not cultivate virtue and are lawless. They despise the power of heaven and earth and do not follow the rules of heaven and earth. As a result, they attract tribulation and perform the killing tribulation of heaven and earth. As soon as he appeared, Dao ancestor Hongjun said so. After he finished speaking, everyone felt a change in the way of heaven. Then, the way of heaven began to become blurry and chaotic. They could no longer see clearly. However, just before the way of heaven completely became chaotic, everyone had already understood the origin of this killing tribulation from the revelation of the way of heaven. This killing tribulation was called the immortal God killing tribulation. It was caused by some immortals who did not respect the celestial emperor. What was the celestial emperor? He was the ruler of all living beings in the world. At the same time, he was also the incarnation of the way of heaven. Not respecting the celestial emperor was not respecting heaven and earth and the way of heaven. Looking down on the celestial emperor and even slapping his face was slapping the face of heaven and earth and the way of heaven. In the primordial world, saints could not be called by their names, and heaven and earth could not be humiliated. If one violated it, they would definitely suffer a calamity. The disciples of Chan school had committed all of these, so they naturally attracted a killing tribulation for themselves. Of course, that was all. This killing tribulation would not turn into a killing tribulation for all immortals and gods. After all, the mistakes made by the disciples of Chan school were only so big. It was already the limit to attract a killing tribulation for themselves. It was not only implicating all the immortals and gods. The main reason for this killing tribulation was the backlash from the Khanate Myriad Dao. In order to seize the initiative of the postnatal era, the 3 pure ones had done something to change the world. They had directly crippled the Khanate Myriad Dao and replaced it with the Heavenly Myriad Dao. Although they had succeeded, they had also offended the Khanate Myriad Dao. How could there be no price to change the world? The backlash of the Khanate Myriad Dao could not do anything to the 3 pure ones, but could it not do anything to the Heavenly Immortal Dao? Therefore, the backlash from the Khanate Myriad Dao fell on the Heavenly Immortal Dao. Although this backlash was strong, with the strengthening of the post-celestial Myriad Dao, there would be a day when it would be completely destroyed. However, there was a prerequisite for all of this, and that was under the circumstances that nothing unexpected happened. However, at this moment, the disciples of Chan's school had angered the way of heaven because they looked down on the celestial emperor and attracted a killing tribulation for themselves. It was this killing tribulation that he was like a catalyst that directly detonated the backlash of the Khanate myriad Tao, thus evolving into a tribulation that targeted the entire heavenly immortal Tao. This was the Khanate myriad Tao's counterattack against the postnatal myriad Tao. Therefore, in this killing tribulation, all cultivators who cultivated the postnatal Tao, no matter which force they came from, had to transcend the tribulation. If they passed it, they would be carefree. If they could not, they would die. After understanding the reason, the three pure ones' faces darkened. They did not expect that after creating the heavenly immortal Tao, there would be so many troublesome things waiting for them to solve. However, even so, the three pure ones did not regret it at all. There was no other reason. It was because compared to the trouble it brought, the benefits brought by the heavenly immortal Tao were greater. Unlike the three pure ones, the other saints were much more indifferent after understanding the reason for this tribulation. Nuwa was still expressionless, as if it had nothing to do with her. Obviously, at this moment, she did not know that this killing tribulation was started by her. If she really knew, she probably would not be able to remain indifferent. Zhuan Ti and Jie frowned, as if they were worried that this tribulation would affect the West. After all, the West was also part of those who looked down on the heavenly court. As for Feng Zichen, the word gloating was written on his face. His expression was abnormally bad. If this was not the Purple Cloud Palace, the three pure ones would have beaten him up long ago. Since you already know the reason for this tribulation, the poor Wei will not explain further. I called you here today not for this matter, but for another matter. As he spoke, a list appeared in Tao Ancestor Hongjun's hand and placed it in front of everyone. Master, what is this? Sensing the powerful fluctuations on the list, the Grand Pure One could not help but ask. This treasure is the Heavenly Book, also known as the God Roll. I called you here today because of this treasure. When the immortal God-killing tribulation erupts, there will definitely be countless immortals and gods who will die because of it. However, the heavens have the virtue of cherishing life, so they left a chance of survival for those living beings in the tribulation. And this chance of survival is on the God Roll. If you leave your name on the list, you can use this treasure to entrust your true spirit to it. If those who are not on the list die in the tribulation, they will turn into ashes. Billions of years of cultivation will turn into flowing water. Pointing at the God Roll, Tao Ancestor Hongjun explained its function. However, after hearing the function of the God Roll, not only was everyone not happy, but they also frowned. In this world, there was no such thing as a free lunch. Since the God Roll's function was so heaven-defying that it could protect one's true spirit, it was impossible to use it without a price. One had to know that in this world, one had to cultivate to the realm of the Daluo Taoist priests if they wanted their true spirit to be indestructible. And this investiture of the gods could actually allow one's true spirit to remain intact, just like the great Luo holy man. Just this point alone was heaven-defying enough. However, that was why the three pure ones were worried. The more heaven-defying something was, the greater the price one had to pay after using it. Those who leave their names on the list will be controlled by the owner of the list. Their life and death will be in the hands of the owner of the list. After a moment of silence, Tao Ancestor Hongjun slowly explained the price of leaving his name on the list. Hearing that, everyone thought to themselves that they were right. Only with freedom as the price would it be in line with the gift of the God Roll. That was an equivalent exchange. You entrusted your life and death to me, and I gave you the ability to be indestructible. To be honest, leaving one's name on the God Roll was indeed a rare good thing for some cultivators of the heavenly immortal Tao. That was because most cultivators of the heavenly immortal Tao would not be able to cultivate to the realm of immortality even if they spent their entire lives. However, as long as they left their names on the God Roll, although they would lose their freedom, they would be able to achieve immortality from then on. From this point of view, they still profited. However, to the saints, this was something they could not tolerate. That was because how could they be willing to see the disciples that they had painstakingly nurtured be enslaved by them? Therefore, they would not sign this God roll. P.S. I want a monthly ticket, I want a premium product. Chapter 7:18. Isn't it just death? Don't be afraid. The saints have ways to revive their disciples. If the list of the God roll is not satisfied, the heaven and earth killing tribulation will not disappear. Tao ancestor Hong Jun seemed to have seen through the three pure ones' thoughts and added. Hearing that, the three pure ones' faces darkened. Feng Zichen almost laughed out loud when he saw that. Since this killing tribulation was caused by the three of you, the list of names on the God roll will be decided by you. I, along with everyone else here, will be your witnesses. Tao ancestor Hong Jun instructed as he handed the God roll to the three pure ones. At that moment, Feng Zichen understood why the Tao ancestor had called him over. It turned out that he was here to be a witness. That's right. The immortal God-killing tribulation was a calamity born from the world. It was also closely related to the heavenly courts. The saints in the Purple Cloud Palace used the God roll to determine the direction of the Great Tribulation. They definitely could not avoid him, the paragon of heaven and earth. They needed him to be a witness. Otherwise, it would be troublesome if Feng Zichen were to cause trouble. Yes, Master. Although the three pure ones were unwilling, they knew that they could not go against Tao ancestor Hong Jun's attitude. They could only take the God roll with an ugly expression. The poor Wei only has one disciple under his name. He still needs him to continue his Tao teachings. He can't write his name on the God roll. The Grand Pure One looked at the God roll in his hand and said, that was the truth. Rin School only had one disciple, Xuandu. If Xuandu's name was written on the God roll, the Tao teachings of Rin School would be broken. Therefore, the God-conferment tribulation had nothing to do with Rin School. However, even so, the Grand Pure One also had a share of karma for the cause of this killing tribulation. If he did not show up on the investiture of the gods, then the Heavenly Lord of the Origin and the Grand Master of Heaven would not say anything, but they would feel uncomfortable in their hearts. After thinking for a while, the Grand Pure One said, since Xuandu can't be on the list, the poor Wei will send an incarnation to replace him. As he spoke, an old man who looked 80% similar to the Grand Pure One walked out of his body and landed on the God roll. Immediately, a new name appeared at the top of the investiture list, Grand Supreme Elderly Lord. This person was the Grand Pure One's good corpse. Everyone was moved when they saw this. This was especially so for the primeval Lord of Heaven and the Prime of Tongtung. They opened their mouths slightly, obviously wanting to say something, but they did not know how to start. What should he say? He said, Big brother, there's no need for that. Your junior brothers will pay for your spot. This was obviously impossible. Whose disciple wasn't their favorite? Junior brother, it's your turn. The Grand Pure One ignored everyone's expressions and handed the God roll to the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning beside him. After receiving the God roll from the Grand Pure One, the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning remained silent for a moment and did not start writing. Because he couldn't make up his mind, he didn't know which disciple's name to fill in. The disciples of the Heavenly Lord of the Primordial Beginning were all carefully selected by him. They were all people with strong backgrounds, good fortune, and virtue. If they were not such a person, they would not be able to catch his attention. The Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning loved such disciples very much. Naturally, he would not be willing to send them to the God roll to be controlled by others. Therefore, the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning thought for a while and threw the God roll to the Grand Master of Heaven. The disciples under the poor Wei are all people with strong backgrounds. They should not be on the list. On the other hand, the disciples under Junior Brother are all born from eggs and have feathers. They have deep roots. They should be on the list. Hearing that, the Grand Master of Heaven almost went crazy from anger. He widened his eyes and looked at the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning beside him in disbelief, as if it was the first time he had met him. To be honest, when Tao Ancestor Hong Jun asked the three of them to discuss the list, The Grand Master of Heaven had a premonition that most of the disciples on the list would be from his sect. That was something that could not be helped. After all, he had the most disciples in Jie School. If Jie School did not send anyone, even if all the disciples of Ren School and Chan School were added together, they would not be able to gather the list of names on the God roll. In fact, the Grand Master of Heaven was also prepared to send someone. As long as the Grand Pure One and the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning sent out a few people symbolically, he would naturally make up for the rest. However, the Grand Master of Heaven did not expect the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning to be so overboard. He was not even willing to send out a few people symbolically. Instead, he wanted the disciples of Jie School to suffer on behalf of the disciples of Chan School. How could the Grand Master of Heaven tolerate that? That was not the way to bully others. Could it be that the disciples of Chan School were disciples, but the disciples of Jie School were not? Even the Grand Pure One looked at him unhappily when he heard the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning's words. The Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning's actions were indeed a little overboard. In order to save face, the Grand Pure One had given up an avatar. However, the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning was really unwilling to pay any price. That was too much. However, the Grand Pure One seemed to have thought of something and did not say anything. However, even if he did not say it, the Grand Master of Heaven, who was involved, had to say it. The disciples of the Poor Way are all people with deep backgrounds. They should not be on the list. The Grand Master of Heaven glared at the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning and said in a muffled voice, "You." Hearing that, the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning was about to flare up. However, just as he spoke, he was interrupted by Tao Ancestor Hong Jun. "All right, the Poor Way did not call you here to listen to the three of you quarrel. Have you come to a conclusion?" Tao Ancestor Hong Jun opened his eyes and asked. This, reporting to Master, no. After looking at each other, the Grand Pure One said, "It's been so long but there's still no result. What are you doing? Do you want the Poor Way and the others to watch you brothers quarrel? Or do you think that it's a glorious thing for you brothers to quarrel?" Tao Ancestor Hong Jun reprimanded. Everyone present was a top-notch existence in the world. However, today, they surrounded the Purple Cloud Palace and watched the three brothers quarrel. Even if they did not feel embarrassed, Tao Ancestor Hong Jun felt embarrassed for them. "Master, please calm down. I know my mistake," the three pure ones hurriedly said with a terrified expression. "The Poor Way will give you some more time. If you can't come to a conclusion, the Poor Way will help you fill it in." Tao Ancestor Hong Jun waved the horsetail whisk in his hand and said, "I understand." The three pure ones nodded to show that they understood. Thus, there was a long silence. "Since the two of you can't bear to part with your disciples, then don't fill in the God roll." Finally, the Grand Pure One broke the silence and said to the two of them, "Not filling in?" Hearing that, the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning and the Grand Master of Heaven seemed to have understood something and said uncertainly, "Yes, don't fill in. The two of you send out your disciples and let them go to the mortal world to transcend the tribulation. If they transcend it, then there's naturally nothing to say. If they can't transcend the tribulation and die, then their souls will enter the God roll. Although they have changed their cultivation to the divine Tao, this might not be a kind of creation." Looking at the two of them, the Grand Pure One revealed his plan. If someone's true spirit is destroyed, the Grand Master of Heaven seemed to have thought of something and asked, "Those whose true spirit is destroyed cannot enter the God roll. If a disciple's true spirit is destroyed, then they can only say that their fate is like this. They can't blame others." The Grand Pure One shook his head and said coldly, "In that case, I have no objections." The Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning took a deep breath and said, "The Poor Way has no objections either." Behind him, the Grand Master of Heaven nodded. "Since you have no objections, I'll report it to Master." Seeing that the two of them had no objections, the Grand Pure One walked to Tao Ancestor Hong Jun and said respectfully, "Master, we have already come to a conclusion." What? Tao Ancestor Hong Jun opened his eyes and asked, We have decided to hang the god roll on Kunlun Mountain and let the disciples of the sect go out of the mountain to transcend the tribulation and fight to complete the killing tribulation. Those who are blessed can safely survive the killing tribulation and continue to enjoy freedom. Those who are not blessed will die from the tribulation and their souls will enter the god roll. They will go from immortals to gods and return to the divine Tao. Those who are difficult to get rid of will die from the tribulation and turn into ashes to complete the killing tribulation. The Grand Pure One bowed to Tao ancestor Hong Jun and revealed his complete plan. Killing tribulation, killing tribulation. It was called the killing tribulation. How could there be no killing? Therefore, even if the god roll existed in this tribulation, there would definitely be people who would die completely. Tao ancestor Hong Jun looked at the Grand Pure One deeply and nodded. The Grand Pure One's plan could be said to be perfect. Putting everything else aside, those who could survive after this killing tribulation were definitely elites in the immortal Tao. Those who entered the god roll and even turned into ashes were those who did not have a deep immortal fate. If he continued to keep them in the immortal Tao, other than lowering the average level of the immortal Tao, there was no other use. He could use this killing tribulation to remove them from the immortal Tao. How was this a killing tribulation of heaven and earth? It was clearly a huge cleanup of the immortal Tao. He would sweep those who did not have enough immortal fate out like trash. In the past, the immortal Tao might be said to be mixed. However, after this immortal god tribulation, the disciples of the immortal Tao could be said to be all good materials. That was a ruthless person. He had quietly completed a cleanup of the immortal Tao. He had preserved the purity of the immortal Tao and no one could find fault with it. However, although the Grand Pure One's plan was good, there was one thing that Feng Zichen did not agree with. That was, why did the god roll hang on Kunlun Mountain? Feng Zichen did not have any objections to the immortal Tao using this killing tribulation to clean up some disciples who were not lucky enough. But if they wanted to hang the investiture of the gods on Mount Kunlun, Feng Zichen would not allow it. Although the immortal god tribulation this time was caused by the backlash of the Khanate myriad Tao, it was also partly because the heavenly courts did not have enough manpower. It was a good opportunity to use this killing tribulation to replenish the manpower of the heavenly courts. Since it was to select talents for the heavenly courts, the god roll should not be hung on Kunlun Mountain but on the South Heaven Gate. Besides, Feng Zichen was worried about keeping the investiture of the gods right under the nose of the three pure ones. Who knew if they would secretly tamper with the god roll and cause the heavenly courts to lose control of the god roll? Anyway, if it were Feng Zichen, and the list of the deification of the gods had always been under his nose, he would definitely do something. If he was already like that, there was no need to mention the Grand Pure One, who was even more sinister than him. He would definitely tamper with it. Therefore, in order to prevent the three pure ones from tampering with the god roll must not be in their hands. Feng Zichen was a straightforward person. He would not hide anything in his heart. Therefore, when he was dissatisfied, he said it directly. Wait, Tao ancestor. Why do you want to hang the god roll on Kunlun Mountain? In the opinion of the Poor Way, since the people on the god roll will go to the heavenly courts to be officials in the future, it is obviously more appropriate to hang it on the South Heaven Gate. His words were reasonable and no one could find fault with them. In order to strengthen his persuasiveness, Feng Zichen even changed his self-address to Poor Taoist. Look, not long after Feng Zichen finished speaking, Hao Tian and Yao Qi, who were beside him, nodded repeatedly. Obviously, they agreed with his words and felt that what he said was very reasonable. Hearing that, the three pure ones' faces turned cold. They could not help but glare at Feng Zichen. This fellow is really *T stirrer. If the god roll was in their hands, they would be able to manipulate it. At that time, it was unknown who would be the biggest winner of the god conferment. However, if the god roll was not in their hands, then no matter what the outcome was, the Chan school and Jie school would suffer a huge loss. Why don't we build a god conferment platform in the mortal world to place the god roll and collect the true spirits of the dead immortals? After thinking for a while, the Grand Pure One took a step back and said, as long as the god roll did not fall into the hands of the heavenly courts, they would always find an opportunity to tamper with it. Feng Zichen smiled and did not answer. He only looked at Dao ancestor Hong Jun. No matter how they discussed, the one who could make the final decision was still Dao ancestor Hong Jun. While Feng Zichen looked at Dao ancestor Hong Jun, Hao Yin and Yao Qi also looked at him with anticipation. Ziwei is right. The purpose of hanging the god roll is to choose talents for the heavenly courts. It should be hung on the south heaven gate. After a long silence, Dao ancestor Hong Jun spoke. He gave the god roll to the heavenly courts. From this moment onwards, the God-conferment tribulation began to change and walk towards the unknown. As soon as Dao ancestor Hong Jun said that, the three pure ones' expressions immediately became unnatural. Hao Qian and Yao Qi's faces were filled with surprise. Their teacher was indeed on their side. Feng Zichen was not surprised at all. The three pure ones would care about the immortals on the god roll because they were disciples that they had taught. Of course, they would care. However, Dao ancestor Hong Jun clearly did not care. Entering the god roll was equivalent to entering the divine Dao. They were not even immortal cultivators. How could they expect Dao ancestor Hong Jun to care about them? Therefore, Dao ancestor Hong Jun would hand the god roll to Hao Yin to strengthen his power. As for the three pure ones' dissatisfaction, would Dao ancestor Hong Jun care? It was as if the saints had considered Dao ancestor Hong Jun's feelings when they suppressed Hao Yin. They had really given them face, and they still dared to be dissatisfied. P.S. Please subscribe, monthly votes. Chapter 719. Whoosh! As soon as Dao ancestor Hong Jun finished speaking, the investiture of the gods immediately reacted and flew in front of the three pure ones and landed in Hao Yin's hands. How stingy! Although Feng Zichen expressed his understanding of Dao ancestor Hong Jun's actions, he could not help but scold him for being stingy in his heart. However, there was nothing he could do. Among the 10 people present, he was the only outsider. The rest were all disciples of the Dao ancestor. Even if there were benefits, the Dao ancestor would definitely think of his own disciples first. That was human nature. Fellow Taoist Hao Yin, can you lend the poor Wei the investiture of the gods? Feng Zichen asked Hao Yin, who was slightly excited because of the investiture of the gods. Why do you want to borrow this treasure? Although he was a little confused, Hao Yin still handed the investiture of the gods to Feng Zichen. What can the poor Wei use the investiture of the gods for? Naturally, he has to fill in a few names on it. Feng Zichen took the investiture of the gods from Hao Yin and said with a smile. Then, he used his finger as a pen and wrote the names of Yang Jian and his mother on the investiture of the gods. When Heavenly Lord Yuanshi and Taoist Kundi saw this, they could not help but feel angry. They wanted to stop them, but they could not say anything when they opened their mouths. It was really unreasonable. Moreover, for the dignity of the heavenly court, Yang Jian and his mother had to be on the investiture of the gods. Otherwise, the emperors of the heavenly court would definitely not let it go. At that time, there would be another huge wave. Thinking of this, Yuanshi Tianzuan and Taoist Junti snorted coldly and turned their heads to look at the investiture of the gods. However, they did not want to look, but Feng Zichen forced them to look. Why, are you not convinced? Fellow Taoists, have you forgotten that these two people are wanted criminals of the heavenly court and will be executed on the immortal execution stage? If you hadn't interfered, the two of them would have died long ago. It was fortunate that the investiture of the gods appeared, allowing them to leave their names on the investiture of the gods and preserve their lives. This is truly a great fortune. Even so, the two of you are still not satisfied. Will you only be satisfied if fellow Taoist Poor Wei and fellow Taoist Hao Yin give up their thrones? Seeing the unhappy expression on their faces, Feng Zichen couldn't help but mock them. How dare you? After being mocked by Feng Zichen, the heavenly lord of the origin and Taoist Junti could not take it anymore and wanted to retort back. However, before the two of them could speak, they were interrupted by Feng Zichen. Don't be unconvinced. Yang Jian is only the beginning. Your disciples will also enter the investiture of the gods. Do you really think that the heavenly court's criminals are so easy to rob? Not paying any price? What a joke. What do the 12 golden immortals of Chan School take the heavenly courts for? The back garden of Kunlun Mountain? You can come and go as you please. Can you find anyone more arrogant than them in the primordial world? Today, I'll tell you that the prisoners of the heavenly court are not so easy to rob. If we don't bring those fanatics to justice, where will the heavenly court's face be? Where will the heavenly laws and heavenly rules be? As he spoke, a powerful aura rose from Feng Zichen's body and pressed towards the heavenly lord of the origin and Taoist Zhuandi. At this moment, Feng Zichen wanted the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect to enter the investiture of the gods. He wanted to vent his anger and let the world know that the heavenly court could not be humiliated. He even wanted to rob the execution ground. When the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect entered the investiture of the gods, Feng Zichen asked them to guard the immortal slaying platform. Isn't it just robbing the execution ground? I'll let you rob as much as you want. If the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect couldn't be punished, who would take the heavenly court seriously in the future? How dare you? At this moment, the heavenly lord of the origin and Taoist Zhuandi were really angry. They roared and released their auras at the same time, pressing towards Feng Zichen. Rumble. The three powerful auras met in the air and entangled with each other. The terrifying fluctuations spread out, and the void was distorted. There were signs of instability, as if it could not withstand the power and was about to collapse. A great battle was about to break out. At the critical moment, Tao ancestor Hong Jun scolded unhappily, "Enough, are you going to tear down the poor Wei's purple cloud palace?" As he spoke, an invisible force spread out from Tao ancestor Hong Jun's body. With the momentum of the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves, it quickly wiped out the auras of Feng Zichen and the other two. "Master, teacher, Tao ancestor, we don't dare," the three of them hurriedly said when they saw this. "Humph." After stopping the three of them, Tao ancestor Hong Jun only snorted coldly and did not argue with them. Instead, he said, "The heavenly court is the face of the untainted world. Its dignity is indeed inviolable." At this point, he paused as if he was considering his words. Then he continued, "However, the 12 golden immortals bear the heavy responsibility of the inheritance of the Chan school. If all of them are sent to the god role, wouldn't the Chan school exist in name only? Therefore, in the opinion of the poor Wei, how about letting the 12 golden immortals of the Chan school choose a few disciples to be on the list on their behalf?" After saying that, Tao ancestor Hong Jun looked deeply at Feng Zichen, as if hinting for him to stop while he was ahead. "Master is right. Guang Qingzi and the others are wrong, but they don't deserve to die. Why don't we let them find a few people to suffer on their behalf?" Heavenly Lord Xianxia, who was originally worried about the safety of his disciple because Tao ancestor Hong Jun was on the side of the heavenly court, agreed without thinking when he suddenly heard Tao ancestor's suggestion, as if he had grabbed a life-saving straw. At that moment, Feng Zichen seemed a little hesitant. He naturally understood the principle of stopping while he was ahead. However, the problem was that the premise of stopping while he was ahead was to see the benefits. However, he had yet to see the benefits. Where could he stop? Feng Zichen's goal was to send the 12 golden immortals of the Chan school to the god role so that he could save the face of the heavenly court and vent his anger. Of course, he did not intend to send all the 12 golden immortals of the Chan school up. That was obviously unrealistic. If he really did that, wouldn't it be equivalent to destroying the Chan school? In that case, the heavenly lord of the origin would flip the table. On this point, he could refer to the Grandmaster of Heaven after the Jie school was destroyed. After the Jie school was destroyed, the Grandmaster of Heaven went crazy and used the Qingping sword to cut off the 4 heavenly pillars. He said that he wanted to destroy this world and re-establish the earth, fire, water, and wind. It was because of this that the God-conferment tribulation, which was originally a small fight between the younger generation, had turned into a calamity that destroyed the world. The primordial world had shattered because of this. Worried that he would force the heavenly lord of the origin into a corner and cause him to be alone, Feng Zichen naturally did not dare to send all the 12 golden immortals of the Chan school to the God Roll. His goal had always been very clear. He wanted to send a portion of the 12 golden immortals of the Chan school to the God Roll. This portion might be 3, 2, or even 1. Even if he only sent one of the 12 golden immortals of the Chan school to the God Roll, it would be a great success for Feng Zichen. Therefore, as long as he did that, Feng Zichen would naturally stop when he was ahead. However, he had not seen it yet. How could he stop? Moreover, the Western sect was involved in the robbery of the execution ground. For this reason, it was impossible for the Western sect to stay out of the immortal god tribulation safely. How could Feng Zichen stop if he did not pull them into the Great Tribulation and let them shed a layer of skin for the Western sect? Tao Ancestor, that's not appropriate. After hesitating for a while, Feng Zichen still said, the price that the 12 golden immortals of the Chan school had to pay was at most a portion of the luck that they had to give to the disciples. In that case, what was the difference between the 12 golden immortals of the Chan school and not being punished? This move was too far from the bottom line that Feng Zichen had set. How could he be satisfied? It's not that the poor way has to let the 12 golden immortals of the Chan school be on the list. It's just that they have made such a huge mistake. If none of them are on the list, it's really unreasonable. After all, this killing tribulation was caused by the 12 golden immortals of the Chan school. It's already like this. If none of them are on the list, how innocent should they be compared to the disciples of the Jie school who are on the list? Why should the disciples of the Jie school be responsible for the mistakes of the disciples of the Chan school? Seeing that Tao Ancestor Hong Jun's expression had begun to turn ugly, Feng Zichen hurriedly explained and brought up the matter of the Jie school. Tao Ancestor Hong Jun might be unfair to Feng Zichen. However, he still had to be fair to the Chan school and the Jie school. They were all disciples of the celestial sect of wonders. There was no reason to differentiate between them. Indeed, after hearing Feng Zichen talk about the Jie school, Tao Ancestor Hong Jun hesitated. If one were to investigate this matter carefully, although the disciples of the Jie school were not too innocent, they were still implicated by the disciples of the Chan school. If not for the 12 golden immortals of the Chan school, the immortal god tribulation might not have erupted. With the abilities of the 3 pure ones, as long as they were given enough time, the backlash from the Khanate Myriad Tao would be resolved by them sooner or later. However, at this critical moment, the 12 golden immortals of the Chan school suddenly caused such a thing and directly detonated the immortal god tribulation. It could only be said that this was the will of the heavens. Even the saints could not do anything about it. However, it was a fact that the disciples of the Chan school had implicated the disciples of the Jie school. If none of the second-generation disciples of the Chan school were on the list, it would be unfair to the Jie school. Regarding the God conferment tribulation, as long as one was not blind, one could tell that the candidates on the God roll had to be prepared by the disciples of the Jie school in the end. However, the 3 sects had agreed to discuss it, but in the end, the ones who produced the candidates were all from the Jie school. Wasn't that a little bullying? Even if it was just an act, the Ren school and the Chan school should produce some disciples so that the Grandmaster of Heaven would not lose face. The Grand Pure One had done a good job in that regard. He did not have a disciple, but he had given up an incarnation. That was enough, right? In comparison, the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginnings' table manners were much worse. Although he did not have many disciples, there were almost 10 of them. However, he was unwilling to give up a single person. That was a little too much. It was no wonder that the Grandmaster of Heaven fell out with him. Teacher, it's not that I have to let the 12 golden immortals be on the list. If they are not on the list, how can I explain to the heavenly courts and the living beings of the 3 realms? You have to know that they have humiliated the heavenly courts in front of all the living beings of the 3 realms. In that case, it would be difficult for this disciple to cover up for them. Therefore, in order to save the face of the heavenly courts, someone from the disciples of the Chan school who robbed the execution ground that day must be on the list. If not, it will not be enough. If not, it will not be enough. If they are not on the list, who will take the heavenly courts seriously in the future? As if he could see Dao ancestor Hong Jun's dilemma, Hao Tian suddenly stepped forward and said a lot of impassioned words, giving Feng Zichen the best assistance. What was a good teammate in the primordial world? That was it. This time, Hao Tian was really angered to death by the heavenly lord of primordial beginning and Taoist Zhuan Ti. In his backyard, his wife was almost beaten to death by others. No man would be able to tolerate such a thing. Therefore, when he saw Feng Zichen pressuring the heavenly lord of primordial beginning step by step, Hao Tian did not hesitate to assist him to completely destroy the heavenly lord of primordial beginning's hope. On the other side, even though the Grandmaster of Heaven knew that Feng Zichen was using him, he still looked at Dao ancestor Hong Jun with anticipation. The heavenly lord of primordial beginning was really not a son. He did not care about the brotherhood at all. Since that was the case, why should he treat him as an elder brother? If Feng Zichen's words made Dao ancestor Hong Jun fall into a dilemma, then Hao Tian's words and the Grandmaster of Heaven's expectant eyes made him make his final decision. However, just as Dao ancestor Hong Jun was about to speak, he suddenly heard the voice of the heavenly lord of primordial beginning. Hao Tian, how dare you? Hearing Hao Tian's words, the heavenly lord of primordial beginning seemed to be greatly shocked. He looked at Hao Tian in disbelief. He did not expect that Hao Tian, who was usually respectful to him, would dare to stab him in the back in the Purple Cloud Palace today. After the shock, endless anger followed. That anger came too suddenly and too fiercely. It directly drowned the heavenly lord of primordial beginning's rationality and made him want to kill Hao Tian. In the Purple Cloud Palace, in front of Dao ancestor Hong Jun, the heavenly lord of primordial beginning wanted to kill Hao Tian. From this, one could see the anger in his heart. However, although the heavenly lord of primordial beginning was angry, there was one person who was even angrier than him. That was Dao ancestor Hong Jun. At this moment, Dao ancestor Hong Jun could be said to be both shocked and angry. What did the heavenly lord of primordial beginning want to do? Did he ever take him seriously? Moreover, he dared to kill Hao Tian in front of him. If he was not here, would the heavenly lord of primordial beginning directly attack Hao Tian so that he could get rid of him? Dao ancestor Hong Jun was furious. He looked at the heavenly lord of primordial beginning with a cold gaze. But at the critical moment, the Grand Pure One was more reliable. The moment he sensed that the heavenly lord of primordial beginning's condition was not right, his reaction was not slow. He directly reached out and grabbed the heavenly lord of primordial beginning's arm and squeezed it hard. After being stimulated, the heavenly lord of primordial beginning immediately woke up and realized what he had just done. Master, I lost my composure. Without daring to hesitate for a moment, the heavenly lord of primordial beginning directly apologized. P.S. I'm afraid that someone won't be able to see it. Let me add more. Then I'll say the rule of adding more. If the monthly votes this month are more than 2,000, then the next month's day will be 8,000 per week. If it's a premium product, then the next month's day will be 10,000 per week. Chapter 720. What do you think about the matter of the disciples of Chan School entering the list? After staring at the heavenly lord of primordial beginning for a long time, Dao ancestor Hong Jun asked expressionlessly, I have no objections. I'll follow Master's instructions. After hesitating for a long time, the heavenly lord of primordial beginning gritted his teeth and agreed. At this point, he had no room to refuse. If he refused, he would really become the target of public criticism. At that time, everyone would target Chan School. Not even one of the 12 golden immortals could be protected. That's good. Nodding, Dao ancestor Hong Jun turned to look at Feng Zichen and asked, in your opinion, how many of the 12 golden immortals of Chan School should be on the list? Hearing that, Feng Zichen could not help but curl his lips. Ask for his opinion? How many of the 12 golden immortals of Chan School should be on the God roll? All of them should be on it. But could Feng Zichen say that? Dao ancestor Hong Jun would probably kick him out of the Purple Cloud Palace as soon as he opened his mouth. Huh? How about 6? While paying attention to Dao ancestor Hong Jun's expression, Feng Zichen probed. 6? You really dare to ask? Then why don't we be more straightforward? Poor Wei will make the decision for Yuqing and write the names of the 12 golden immortals of Chan School on the god roll. As expected, after hearing Feng Zichen's words, Dao ancestor Hong Jun's face darkened and he said unhappily, "Ha, it's just a joke. Dao ancestor, don't take it seriously. Actually, in my opinion, it would be best if the names of all the disciples of the Chan school could be written on the investiture of the gods. However, that's not realistic. Moreover, Dao ancestor, you've already spoken. Of course, I have to give you face. Look, how about 2 or 3? Feng Zichen laughed and said with a straight face. 2 or 3 could be said to be his bottom line. Moreover, he had calculated the number before. Not only would he save the face of the heavenly court, but he would also not shake the foundation of Chan school. It was just right. But after pondering for a moment, Dao ancestor Hong Jun nodded, indicating that he agreed with this number. Then, he turned to look at the heavenly lord of the origin. Among the 12 golden immortals of Chan school, there should be 2 people on the rankings. As for who they are, it's up to you to decide. In the end, Ancestor Hong Jun felt sorry for his disciple. He automatically ignored the number 3 out of the 2 or 3 and chose a smaller number to tell Heavenly Lord Yuanshi. Both are flesh and blood. How can this disciple make such a decision? Let them all descend the mountain to undergo their tribulations. As for who makes it onto the rankings, that will depend on their own fate. The primeval Lord of Heaven shook his head and said sorrowfully, sending a disciple that he had personally taught to death was not something that anyone could do. Seeing this, Feng Zichen pursed his lips. If you really want what's best for them, why didn't you do it earlier? If the heavenly Lord of primordial beginning had restrained his disciples, they would not have made such a big mistake. Spoiling a child is akin to killing a child. This has been the case since ancient times. After dealing with the heavenly Lord of primordial beginning, Feng Zichen looked at Saint Xuanti. Fellow Taoist Xuanti, fellow Taoist primordial beginning has contributed a few spots on the god roll. Isn't the Western sect going to express their gratitude? After all, you have a part in embarrassing the heavenly courts. Fellow Taoist, don't tell me that you don't want to pay anything and just let this matter go. He turned around and walked to Taoist Xuanti. Feng Zichen handed him the god roll in his hand and gestured for him to fill in a few names. Seeing this, Taoist Xuanti was so angry that his face turned green. What do you mean that he did not pay any price? Can't you see that such a huge Mount Meru has been destroyed? If this is not a price, what else can be called a price? It's really bullying. With anger in his heart, Taoist Xuanti was about to argue with Feng Zichen. However, at that moment, the Taoist guide beside him suddenly pulled him. It was also at that moment that Taoist Xuanti realized that the situation around him was not right. Why were the 3 pure ones looking at him faintly? Even Dao ancestor Hong Jun looked at him inexplicably, as if he was silently plotting something. On second thought, Taoist Xuanti understood what was going on. Good fellow, I've suffered a loss, but I can't see others doing well. The disciples of the 3 pure ones are already on the list. Isn't it inappropriate for the Western sect to watch the show from the side? Therefore, why don't you choose a few disciples to be on the list? In that case, wouldn't everyone be in the same boat? No one would laugh at each other. After understanding the sinister intentions of the 3 pure ones, although Taoist Xuanti felt upset, he knew that the Western sect could not refuse this matter. Once they refused, the 3 pure ones and the others would definitely join forces to plot against the Western sect so that they could pull the Western sect into the immortal god calamity. Since fellow Taoist primordial beginning has 2 disciples, the Western sect will be the same as him. We will also have 2 disciples. When the killing tribulation erupts, they will naturally come to the east to face the tribulation. In that case, what do you think, fellow Taoists? After pulling Taoist Xuanti to the side, Taoist Jieyin stood up and said to everyone. But when the crowd heard this, they all agreed. Seeing that the 2 people from the Western sect had retreated, the 3 pure ones retracted their gazes. Taoist Xuanti heaved a sigh of relief. On the other side, Feng Zichen looked at Taoist Zhuan, who had heaved a sigh of relief. He was thinking about how to plot against him ruthlessly so that he could pull the Western sect into the immortal god Calamity. That was actually not difficult. Feng Zichen already had a rough plan in his heart. As for how to operate it, he could refer to how the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning dealt with Chan School during the God Conferment period. Do you think that you can avoid the Great Tribulation by going into seclusion and singing in the Yellow Court? Let me tell you, that's a dream. If you don't come to face the tribulation, I'll find someone to pull you into the tribulation. The Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning used the interpersonal relationships between the disciples of Jie School to pull the entire Jie School into the immortal god Calamity. That method could be said to be brilliant. Everyone had friends, and friends had friends of their own. In this way, a huge network of relationships was formed. And that was an opportunity. Feng Zichen understood the plan of the two people from the Western sect. It was nothing more than sending two disciples who were not valued to deal with the immortal god Calamity. However, as long as they sent their disciples over, they would give others a chance to take advantage of them. Through these two disciples of the Western sect, they could completely involve their friends and fellow disciples in the immortal god Calamity. In the end, the Western sect would be like the Jie School in Feng Zichen's previous life. They would be pulled into this vortex and could not escape. In fact, when plotting against the Western sect, Feng Zichen could even cooperate with the Grand Master of Heaven. The Grand Master of Heaven definitely did not want his disciple to be on the list, but he had no choice. There were too few disciples of Chan School. Even if all of them were on the list, they could not meet the requirements of the God roll. For that, the list on the God roll could only be chosen from the disciples of Jie School. That was because there were enough disciples of Jie School that could completely meet the requirements of the God roll. Therefore, this immortal god Calamity seemed to be specially targeted at Jie School. However, don't forget, in the primordial world, apart from Jie School, there was another sect with many disciples that could completely meet the requirements of the God roll. That was the Western sect. The Western sect was far away from the East. The few great calamities of the world did not affect it. Although it had experienced several demonic calamities, it was difficult to shake its foundation. Even if there were not as many disciples of the Western sect as there were at their peak, there would not be fewer. After all, the Western sect owned the entire Western sect. The current Western sect was barren, but it was not as barren as imagined. One had to know that in the ancient Lich era, the Lady of Earth had once used the power of Panga's heart to repair the Western Earth meridians. It was true that even Goddess Huda was unable to restore him to his peak state even after giving it her all. However, even if it was only repaired a little, it would allow the Western sect to regain its vitality and give birth to new living beings. The new living beings had no other choice but to join the Western sect. In the Western sect, there was only one sect, the Western sect. Other Tao teachings were not allowed to exist. If those new living beings wanted to become cultivators, they could only become disciples of the Western sect and cultivate the Dharma formulation of Zhuan. The number of disciples of the Western sect, which owned the entire Western sect, could be imagined. Even if they were not as good as Jie School, they were not far away. If the disciples of the Western sect were to replace the disciples of Jie School on the God roll, would the Grand Master of Heaven be willing? He would definitely be willing. He reckoned that as long as Feng Zichen told the Grand Master of Heaven about this plan, the Grand Master of Heaven would be able to arrange the rest without Feng Zichen's interference. It could even be said that even if he risked his life, the Grand Master of Heaven would drag the Western sect down for the sake of the inheritance of Jie School. The saying that a fellow Taoist would rather die than die was applicable everywhere. Since you already have a plan, the poor way will not ask about what happens next. It's up to you to decide how the Great Tribulation will begin and how it will unfold. After confirming the God roll, Tao Ancestor Hongjun said to everyone. Then he took out a long whip and handed it to the Grand Pure One. This item is called the God Striking Whip. It's a treasure that comes with the God roll. It specializes in hitting the gods on the roll. Today, the poor way will give this item to you so that you can use it when you become a god in the future. The God Striking Whip was a supreme-grade Khanate numinous treasure that could seal one's Dharma powers. Those who were hit by it would instantly have their Dharma powers sealed and be like mortals. It was extremely terrifying. Moreover, that was not the greatest use of the God-striking whip. The greatest use of the God-striking whip was just like its name. It was used to strike gods. Anyone who left their name on the god roll would be restrained by it. They would be unable to resist the whip holder. In other words, the so-called God-striking whip was a weapon that controlled the gods on the god roll. It was just like the shepherd's whip in the hands of a shepherd. "Thank you, Master." After receiving the God-striking whip, the Grand Pure One bowed and thanked him. Seeing that, Feng Zichen only narrowed his eyes and did not do anything extreme. That was fair, wasn't it? Since the god roll was handed over to Haoyan, the God-striking whip naturally had to be handed over to the three pure ones. There was nothing wrong with that. Both sides had half of the treasures. It seemed fair, didn't it? Actually, Feng Zichen was already very satisfied with that outcome. After all, if he followed the normal procedure, the God-striking whip and the god roll would fall into the hands of the three pure ones. As for Haoyan, he did not get anything. However, now, under Feng Zichen's strong arguments, not only did they obtain the god roll, but they also forced the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning and Taoist Xuanti to sign their disciples on the god roll. Such an outcome had greatly exceeded Feng Zichen's expectations. He was very satisfied with that. Any more and it would be too much. Since all of you are here, why don't we set the rules for this immortal god-killing tribulation? It's better than calling you here in the future. It'll save us some trouble. After dealing with the god roll and the god-striking whip, Tao Ancestor Hongjun instructed everyone. After saying that, Tao Ancestor Hongjun ignored everyone's reaction and disappeared. Regarding this, the crowd felt very helpless. What else could they do? They had to do as the Tao Ancestor said. Although he said that he was discussing with them, Tao Ancestor Hongjun used his actions to tell them that it was not a notice but an order. Fellow Taoists, how should we carry out this immortal god-killing tribulation? The Grand Pure One broke the silence and asked. After Tao Ancestor Hongjun left, the Grand Pure One was the strongest. Therefore, he was the one who presided over the meeting. Why don't Jie School and Chan School send out their disciples and have a fight? The dead will enter the roll, and the living will be free. Big brother, what do you think of this method? The Grand Master of Heaven was angry and said directly. Those were really angry words. If they really followed that method, Chan School would definitely not be a match for Jie School. There was no need for Duobao and Xianxia to attack. As long as the disciples of Jie School swarmed forward, just their Dharma treasures could bury the disciples of Chan School alive. Third brother, what are you saying? The immortal god-killing tribulation is not a child's play. How can it be like a boorish man fighting each other? Afraid that the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning and the Grand Master of Heaven would quarrel again, the Grand Pure One did not wait for the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning to speak and scolded the Grand Master of Heaven. At the side, Feng Zichen and the others sat there and watched the three brothers quarrel with interest. It was said that everyone was discussing together, but other than the three pure ones, they could not interrupt. After all, this immortal god-killing tribulation was mainly targeted at the three pure ones. Unless you were willing to enter the tribulation, it was better not to interfere in such matters. As long as you dared to interrupt, the three pure ones would dare to pull you into the tribulation. After arguing for a long time, the three pure ones finally reached a consensus. They agreed to use the next change of the human dynasty as the battlefield. Each of them would support one side and kill each other. In the process of competing for the true dragon, they would complete the killing tribulation. Feng Zichen did not have any objections to that. It was inevitable that the three pure ones would choose the human race as the battlefield. After all, the human race was the protagonist of the world. Moreover, this matter was not without precedent. Be it Xianyuan Zhan Qiyu or Qing Tang destroying Xia, there were immortals behind them. The three pure ones used the dynasty as the battlefield. They were just following the old rules. As for the prosperity of the dynasty and the peace of the country, so what if it was not suitable to be a battlefield? That did not matter. He just had to wait. There was no immortal dynasty in the world. As long as he waited, There would always be a ruler of a fallen country. Anyway, the thing that immortals did not lack the most was time. P.S. I will start updating on May 1st, at least 7 days. Chapter 721. After the results were out, everyone bade farewell to Tao ancestor Hongjun and left the Purple Cloud Palace. However, the 3 pure ones were traveling together. However, when he left, the Grand Master of Heaven was traveling alone. He did not travel with the 2 saints. Everyone left the Purple Cloud Palace. The Grand Master of Heaven snorted at the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning and left alone. Big brother, look at him. Does he even have the slightest bit of respect for you? Seeing this scene, the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning said to the Grand Pure One beside him with a displeased expression. He was very dissatisfied with the Grand Master of Heaven's attitude and felt that he did not take him, his brother, seriously. Enough. Second brother, how could you say those words when we were discussing the god role in the Purple Cloud Palace? You're just dissatisfied with third brother's disciple. It's fine if you say it in private, but how can you say it in front of everyone? If that's the case, where will third brother go? The Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning was dissatisfied with the Grand Master of Heaven, but the Grand Pure One was also dissatisfied with him. Until now, he still did not understand what the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning was thinking that he could say those words in the Purple Cloud Palace. Saying that the disciples of Jie School were all cowards in front of everyone and scolding their disciples as beasts, wasn't this equivalent to making sect Master Tian lose face in front of everyone? No one would be able to tolerate that. Moreover, the immortal god Calamity this time was clearly a very simple matter, but the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning had made it complicated. The Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning only needed to give up a few disciples and send them to the god role so that the Grand Master of Heaven could be appeased. The Grand Master of Heaven would naturally make up for the remaining candidates. In that case, wouldn't the immortal god Calamity be over? However, the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning's operation was really hard to explain. In any case, in the end, he could not avoid it. He had no choice but to send his 2 disciples to the god role. Moreover, he had offended the Grand Master of Heaven and ruined the relationship between the brothers. The Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning was the one who had failed to win. So, Big brother, I'm doing this for third brother's sake. Take a look at his disciples. Other than the top few, what kind of people are the rest? There are those who cultivate demonic arts, those who cultivate evil arts, and even those who cultivate with the blood of living beings. How could such actions be said to have the slightest bit of immortal atmosphere? It's even more demonic than the demonic path. What's the point of keeping such a disciple? Why don't we let them face the tribulation right now and correct the immortal Tao? Furthermore, third brother's talent is not inferior to ours in the slightest. However, his cultivation level is indeed the lowest among the 3 of us. Is third brother not working hard enough? Of course not. The main reason is that I was implicated by those disciples. The disciples of Jie School are doing evil outside. As their master, he will naturally be affected. As a result, my Tao heart is covered in dust and my cultivation progress is abnormally slow. In the Purple Cloud Palace, the poor Wei wants to send the disciples of the Jie sect to the investiture of the gods. Perhaps she has some selfish motives, but most of it is definitely for the good of third brother. The Jie order has been in chaos for too long. Now is the time to set things right. Get rid of those evil disciples and return peace to the Xian sect. It's also good for third brother to focus on cultivating. After being reprimanded by the Grand Pure One, the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning could not help but cry out in grievance. Just as he had said, he might have some selfish motives for sending the disciples of the Jie School to the god role. However, his fundamental goal was definitely for the good of the Grand Master of Heaven. The friendship between the 3 pure ones was still very stable. There were really too many disciples of the Jie School. Moreover, the Grand Master of Heaven did not have many restrictions on them. That could be seen from the rules of the Jie School. There were only 2 rules. They had to respect their teachers and not betray the sect. In other words, apart from that, the disciples of the Jie school had no taboos. In a sense, the disciples of the Jie school were more detestable than the disciples of the Chan school. After all, apart from being a little arrogant, the disciples of the Chan school could not be picked out. However, the disciples of the Jie school were different. They really dared to harm living beings. The disciples of the Jie school were indiscriminate. Basically, there were all kinds of demons and ghosts. Was it possible to say that they were all good people? Demons like to eat humans the most. Most of the disciples of the Jie school had deep negative karma. The Grand Master of Heaven was implicated by it. That was why he was entangled in karma and his Tao heart was covered in dust. It was difficult for his cultivation to advance. The Grand Master of Heaven might have sensed such a situation, but it was impossible for him to attack his disciples. No matter what the disciples of the Jie school were like outside, they still respected their teachers. How could the Grand Master of Heaven do anything to his disciples who respected him so much? However, he could not do it, but the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning could. In order to solve the hidden dangers of the Grand Master of Heaven, the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning said those words in the Purple Cloud Palace. He wanted to send all the disciples of the Jie school to the God Roll. As a matter of fact, the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning did not make any mistakes in letting the disciples of the Jie school be on the God Roll. Such an outcome was because some of the disciples of the Jie school were guilty. The Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning's mistake was that he used the wrong method and did not care about the feelings of the Grand Master of Heaven. He felt that he did this for the good of the Grand Master of Heaven. However, the Grand Master of Heaven felt that the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning was slapping his face. Then wasn't there a problem? The Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning thought that I was doing it for your own good. It's fine if you don't appreciate it, but you still dare to throw a tantrum at me. You really don't know what's good for you. How could the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning not be dissatisfied with the Grand Master of Heaven? The Grand Master of Heaven thought that after you slapped my face, you still want me to understand you. If I tolerate this, I won't be able to survive in the primordial world in the future. Therefore, he exploded and fell out with the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning on the spot. After hearing the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning's words, the Grand Pure One could not help but fall silent. If the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning could think of the Grand Master of Heaven's current situation, he could naturally think of it too. Therefore, when the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning wanted the disciples of the Jie school to be on the God Roll, he chose to remain silent. Since his younger brother could not do it, he would let his older brothers do it. They would help the Grand Master of Heaven get rid of those disciples with deep roots and return peace to the Jie school of the Celestial Sect of Wonders. However, the Grand Pure One, who had tacitly agreed to the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning's plan, did not expect him to be so unreliable. At the same time, he did not expect the Grand Master of Heaven to have such a huge reaction and fall out with the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning. It was supposed to be a matter of brotherhood. However, under the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning's manipulation, it had turned into a scene of brothers quarreling. The Grand Pure One was quite tired. However, he could not blame the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning. After all, although the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning had some selfish motives, his starting point was for the good of the Grand Master of Heaven. No, it was because of this selfishness that the matter had developed into the current situation. At the thought of this, the Grand Pure One felt even more tired. Forget it. With third brother's current attitude, I don't think he will listen to the poor way. Then I'll explain to him in the future. The Grand Pure One sighed and said helplessly. Then, he turned to the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning and said, on the other hand, second brother, can you pay attention to the way you speak in the future? Don't be so aggressive. He wanted to say something unpleasant, but after thinking about it, he felt that it was a little harsh, so he changed his words. Yes, hearing that, the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning's mouth twitched, but he did not say anything. Next, the two of them looked at each other without saying anything and returned to their respective dojos. On the other hand, after Feng Zichen returned to the boundless starry sky, he immediately began to make arrangements. First, he sent the black tortoise in Luo Shui into reincarnation. This immortal god calamity might be a killing calamity to others, but to this black tortoise, it was a huge opportunity. With his status and merit, he would definitely not die in the calamity. The heavenly Tao would not allow such a situation to happen. If he could not die in the calamity, he would undoubtedly be able to reap enough benefits. He believed that after experiencing the baptism of this killing calamity, the black tortoise would definitely undergo a shocking transformation. After sending the black tortoise into reincarnation, Feng Zichen looked at the Gaochen heavenly palace. There, the Gaochen emperor was in a deep sleep, waiting for the opportunity to return. In today's world, the immortal god calamity was about to arrive, and the human race would also encounter unprecedented changes. Wasn't this the opportunity for the Gaochen emperor to return? With a thought, Feng Zichen's will left the emperor's star and descended into the Gaochen heavenly palace. Dong, in the depths of the palace, an incomparably sacred Khanate Taoist embryo could be seen wandering in the sea of incense and willpower, still beating by itself. With every beat, heaven and earth would resonate and intertwine with countless laws of heaven and earth. Moreover, during this process, the origin of heaven and earth appeared and poured into the Khanate Taoist embryo endlessly, as if accelerating its growth. In addition, the origin of the Gaochen star, the origin of the power of incense and willpower, as well as the majestic power that belonged to the human Tao, were also absorbed by the Khanate Taoist embryo as it beat. Heaven and earth, human Tao, Gaochen star. So many powerful forces appeared at the same time just to provide power for the Khanate Taoist embryo to help it grow. In that case, the identity of the natural Taoist fetus was obvious. Feng Zichen, the heavenly emperor of supreme polarity of the West. Only he could enjoy such luxurious treatment. Heaven and earth spontaneously provided him with the origin of heaven and earth to help him revive. Even the human Tao, which had always been ethereal, gave him power to support him. It's about time. Feng Zichen could not help but say when he felt the great power contained in the Khanate Taoist embryo. Of course, the so-called about time did not mean that the Gaochen emperor had accumulated enough power to revive him. Instead, it meant that the current power was almost enough to restore the Gaochen emperor's intelligence. It had only been tens of thousands of years since the Gaochen emperor's fall. Even with the help of heaven and earth and the human Tao, it was impossible for him to accumulate enough power to revive him in such a short time. If primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian could be revived so easily, they would not be so afraid of death. The more powerful an existence was, the harder it was to truly kill them. At the same time, once they fell, it was even more difficult for them to return and recover to their peak. However, this was obviously not applicable to Feng Zichen. This was because his providence was too strong. In the Eldritch world, providence was really a good thing. As long as one had enough providence, they could almost do whatever they wanted. Feng Zichen's providence, how should he describe it? Putting aside his identity, just the Gaochen emperor's alias was enough. It could be said that he was the alias with the most karma of heaven and earth. The great Taoist priests, the post-celestial Tao ancestor, the human Tao emperor, the celestial demon Tao ancestor, the Khanate sword ancestor, the martial Tao ancestor, the Gaochen emperor, the incense divine Tao ancestor. With so many karma of heaven and earth, one could imagine how strong the Gaochen emperor's providence was. Even if he was not the first in the Eldritch world, he was still able to squeeze into the top 10. Even with the identity of the great Emperor Ziwei, who controlled the entire boundless starry sky, his providence might not be as strong as the Gaochen emperor's. Why did heaven and earth love the Gaochen emperor so much that it did not hesitate to use its origin to revive him? The reason was that he had enough identities and sufficient providence. Fellow Taoist, it's time to wake up. Standing in front of the Khanate Tao embryo, Feng Zichen said softly. Following it, a great will was awakened in the Tao fetus. In a trance, an illusory image appeared above the Khanate Tao embryo. Greetings to me. After waking up from the silence, the Gaochen emperor opened his eyes and said to Feng Zichen who was in front of him. Fellow Taoist, it's time for you to go. Without standing on ceremony with the Gaochen Emperor, Feng Zichen said straightforwardly. In fact, there was no need to stand on ceremony. After all, they were one. There was no need to stand on ceremony. It was strange for him to be polite to himself. It was even stranger than him speaking to himself. I already know. Don't worry. The two of them were telepathically connected. Without needing Feng Zichen to say his plan, the Gaochen Emperor naturally understood his plan. Okay. Then, fellow Taoist, go ahead. As they spoke, Feng Zichen took out a streak of imperial purple qi and sent it into the Gaochen Emperor's body. This streak of imperial purple qi was the first streak of imperial purple qi nurtured by the Emperor Star. It could be said that it had existed since the beginning of the world. It was the purest Emperor Tao origin. Its power could be said to be shockingly great. With this streak of imperial purple qi, not to mention the human emperor, he could even compete with the heavenly emperor. Back when the real spirits of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors were nurtured, Feng Zichen was reluctant to use this streak of imperial purple qi. Now that it was his turn, he was going to use this streak of imperial purple qi. In this life, it was his turn to compete for the position of the human emperor. That's right. The reason why Feng Zichen woke up the Gaochen Emperor was to let him reincarnate as a human and compete for the position of the human emperor. This was to prepare for the immortal god Calamity in the future. Once the immortal god Calamity was activated, it would definitely happen in the era that he ruled. In this way, Feng Zichen was confident that the immortal god Calamity would happen according to his rhythm. Since he was going to be reincarnated, Feng Zichen would definitely not treat him unfairly. Everything had to be prepared to the best. The scale and extravagance would definitely be greater than the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors combined. If not, it would not be enough to show his nobility. After giving the imperial purple qi to the Gaochen Emperor, Feng Zichen was still worried. After giving him the 10,000 spirit crown and the human Tao Emperor seal, he nodded his head in satisfaction. Chapter 722. Since ancient times, the North Star was the first to be born with 2 innate cardinal treasures. After arranging everything, Feng Zichen prepared to send the North Star's incarnation into the cycle of reincarnation. The North Star's goal in reincarnation was to become the human emperor and secretly lead the process of the investiture of the gods. It would be a great opportunity to take down the Western sect. Since that was the case, it had to be done secretly so that no one would discover it in advance. At the very least, before the North Star's reincarnation became the human emperor, no one could discover his true identity. For this reason, the North Star's reincarnation could not start from the 6 paths of reincarnation. A special reincarnation passage had to be opened for him. With a thought, the Hongmeng Daozhong appeared in Feng Zichen's hand. Open! Feng Zichen raised the Hongmeng Daozhong and knocked on the void. Suddenly, boundless primordial qi descended and surged continuously in the void. In the end, it formed an incomparably deep passageway. No one knew where it led to, but it was surrounded by dense reincarnation power. This was the reincarnation passage that Feng Zichen opened with the Hongmeng power. Feng Zichen was proficient in the path of reincarnation. In addition, the Hongmeng power had the ability to evolve all kinds of powers. With the two of them working together, they could definitely hide from the perception of others and open up a reincarnation passage that could allow an existence like the North Star to pass through. The primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian was simply too powerful. Every move of his was like the might of the heavens. If such an existence reincarnated, the commotion it caused would definitely alarm the entire eldritch world. Even if he wanted to hide it, it would be extremely difficult. Only Feng Zichen, who had a large number of innate cardinal treasures and the support of the boundless starry sky, was confident that he could completely conceal the phenomenon of the North Star's reincarnation. Deity, I'll take my leave. Seeing the reincarnation passage appear, the North Star Emperor did not hesitate. He nodded at Feng Zichen and walked over. Whoosh! The illusionary figure of the North Star Emperor and the innate Tao embryo behind him turned into a ray of light and entered the reincarnation passage. At the same time, The Zichen sword and the Pantheon painting, which were hanging in the Gaochen Heavenly Palace, seemed to have sensed their master's departure. After swaying for a while, they also flew into the reincarnation passage. Only then did the reincarnation passage slowly close and disappear from the world as if it had never appeared. The Gaochen is truly amazing this time. Feng Zichen lamented as he looked in the direction where Gaochen disappeared. 2 Khanate cardinal treasures and 2 supreme-grade Khanate spiritual treasures. Such treatment was truly hard to find in the world. He really hoped that the birth of the Gaochen would not scare the family that he reincarnated into. East Sea, Golden Turtle Island. The first thing sect leader Tong Tian did when he returned to the Jie sect was to order the boy of fire and water to ring the immortal gathering bell on the highest scale, so as to summon all the disciples of the Jie sect to the main hall of the Jie sect for a meeting. Dang 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 dang. The melodious sound of the bell reverberated in the eastern sea for a total of 108 times before it stopped. This time, the disciples of the Chan sect were frightened, and they felt deeply uneasy. The more times the immortal gathering bell was rung, the more serious the matter was. For it to ring 108 times in a row was already the highest scale. This meant that the Jie sect was on the brink of destruction. However, the Jie sect was the orthodoxy of a sage. In this world, who had the power to destroy a sage's orthodoxy? With deep worries, the disciples of the Jie sect put down what they were doing and rushed to the main hall of the Jie sect on Golden Turtle Island with a solemn expression. With the immortal god Calamity, the Jie sect had become the target of public criticism due to the large number of disciples. They were about to be targeted by everyone. In the face of everyone's unfriendly gazes, would the Jie sect not have the power to destroy them? With the calamity right before them, sect leader Tong Tian summoned his disciples. Other than warning them, he also planned to give them some treasures to increase their chances of surviving the calamity. The immortal gathering bell has rung 108 times in a row. It seems like something big has happened to the Jie sect. Opening his eyes, Xianxia could not help but say. The ringing of the immortal gathering bell was so loud that it woke him up from his seclusion. That's right, Xianxia was in seclusion. To be precise, he had been in seclusion ever since he stepped down from the position of the Heavenly Emperor. After careful calculation, it should have been millions of years. During this period he did not even move, let alone go out. He was no different from a stubborn rock. He was really in seclusion. That was the reason why Jie school gradually became chaotic. One had to know that Xianxia was the celestial lord of the Xian sect who was personally conferred by Dao ancestor Hongjun. He had the power to punish the Xian sect. Once a disciple of the Xian sect did evil in the world and was discovered by him, he could suppress him or kill him directly without any negative karma. Because of this, with Xianxia in charge of the Jie sect, the disciples of the Jie sect were afraid. Naturally, every one of them was obedient and followed the rules of the Xian sect. However, as Xianxia went into seclusion and did not show up for millions of years, the disciples of the Jie sect were no longer restrained. Naturally, they grew solid and started to do evil. It could only be said that these disciples of the Jie sect should go to the investiture of the gods. Is the investiture of the gods about to start? As Xianxia woke up, he and his original body began to share their memories again. Soon, he knew what happened recently. Tisk tisk. It seems that during the time when the poor Wei was in seclusion, the eldritch world was unusually exciting. Xianxia smacked his lips and said with interest. Then, his figure gradually became illusory and soon disappeared without a trace. He went to Golden Ao Island. Such a big thing happened in the Jie sect. As the eldest senior brother of the Jie sect, he had to be there. Moreover, if Feng Zichen wanted to cooperate with the Tong Tian sect leader in the future, he would need his help to bridge the gap between the two of them. The people now might not know, but the people of the older generation definitely knew that Xianxia and the North Star Emperor had been good friends since they were young. He vaguely remembered that the two of them were called the two heroes of the eldritch world. No one in the younger generation could be on par with the two of them. Even many of the people of the older generation could not be compared to them. They were really too outstanding. The North Star Emperor opened the way of the sword and created the way of the gods and demons. The 9 heaven immortals established the way of the talisman and established the currency system of the eldritch world. These were all matters of great merit. Many people could not do it in their entire lives. However, they did it one after another. As a result, for a period of time, their legends were spread everywhere in the eldritch world. The brilliance of the rest of the people, even the Saint Donghuang, was overshadowed by the 2 of them. It could be said that the younger generation would surpass the older generation. As he thought, Xianxia came to Golden Ao Island in front of the Tongtian sect leader. Xianxia greets Master. Xianxia bowed respectfully in front of the Tongtian sect leader. Xianxia? Why you here? Looking at Xianxia who suddenly appeared in front of him, the Tongtian sect leader's face was full of shock. With his strength, he did not realize how Xianxia appeared in front of him. In his opinion, this was extremely unbelievable. But immediately, the Tongtian sect leader seemed to realize something and looked at Xianxia with his Dharma eye. He was shocked by what he saw. Xianxia, how can your realm be? In the eyes of the Tongtian sect leader, Xianxia's cultivation had already reached the half-step primordial chaos realm. He was only 1 step away from becoming the carefree primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian. After being in seclusion for millions of years, I was lucky to have gained something and my realm was able to increase a little. Xianxia smiled and said modestly. His character setting could not fall. The North Star Emperor, who was as famous as him, had already achieved the Tao for many years. Naturally, he could not fall too far behind. At least, he had to have the cultivation of a half-step primordial chaos realm. This time, after being in seclusion for millions of years, Xianxia's biggest gain was to increase his realm from the middle stage of the Sage-to-Be realm to the half-step primordial chaos realm. He was one of the top great divines in the eldritch world. In addition, he had cut off all 3 corpses, and they had achieved the same mind. As long as he took them back into his body, he could take another step forward. But it was this step that was difficult for Xianxia. It was difficult to cut off the 3 corpses, but it was even more difficult to take them back. No matter how hard Xianxia tried, he could not perfectly merge the 3 corpses into one. However, he was not in a hurry. At his level, breaking through to become the primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian was inevitable. It was nothing more than grinding. Slowly grinding, he would eventually grind his cultivation up. Good. Very good. Xianxia, you are indeed the most outstanding disciple of the Xian sect. I see your cultivation. It won't be long before you can achieve the Tao and become an existence on par with me. After being stunned, the Tongtian sect leader was ecstatic. If there was a primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian in his sect, it would be worth it even if the Jia sect was gone. Among all the saints, who could cultivate a primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian like him? Having a disciple who was comparable to a sage was a matter of pride no matter where one went. However, when he thought of the Jia sect, the Tongtian sect leader seemed to have thought of something. He was suddenly stunned, and then took a deep look at Xianxia. No one knew what he was thinking. You flatter me. Master, you flatter me. Even though he was praised by the Tongtian sect leader, Xianxia was still as humble as ever. I see that your 3 corpses are unstable. I think you are stuck at the step of merging the 3 corpses. As for how to do this step, I have never experienced it, so I have nothing to teach you. However, when your grandmaster preached in the past, he talked about this. I will sort it out for you later, and you can study it yourself. The Tongtian sect leader was very experienced. He saw the problem that Xianxia encountered at a glance. However, he only cut 2 corpses back then and did not cut the 3rd one. He did not know much about how to merge the 3 corpses, so he had nothing to teach Xianxia. The only thing that could help him was to give him a piece of enlightenment from the Tao ancestors' preaching. He hoped that he could understand it. Thank you, Master. Hearing this, Xianxia's eyes lit up. The method of cutting the 3 corpses was created by the Tao ancestor. If he could get the Tao ancestors' enlightenment, even if it was just a few words, it would be enough for him to gain something. Just like this, the two of them started to communicate. Just as the two of them were communicating, the rest of the disciples of the Jie school also arrived one after another. The first to arrive was Taoist Duobao. After him were the true disciples of the incongruence Divine Mother. Next were the inner disciples like Zhao Gongming and the three Shao immortals. Seeing that everyone gradually arrived, Xianxia and the Tongtian sect leader consciously stopped communicating. After all the disciples of the Jie school had arrived, the Tongtian sect leader first told the disciples about the immortal god Calamity. Then, after the disciples recovered from their shock, he distributed the Khanate spirit treasures in his hand. Then, he told everyone to cultivate in peace so that when the immortal god Calamity came, they would have a better chance of survival. Until then, things were very normal. But when it was over, the Tongtian sect leader suddenly changed the topic to Xianxia. Xianxia, this calamity is the postnatal calamity. It is also the calamity of the Jie school and the Chan school. You obtained the Tao from the Khanate realm, so this calamity has nothing to do with you. Therefore, you don't have to participate in this immortal god calamity. During the calamity, you can cultivate in seclusion and hope to achieve the Tao as soon as possible. Looking at Xianxia, the Tongtian sect leader suddenly said. Hearing that, Xianxia was stunned. What was the meaning of not letting him participate in this calamity? What did he mean by he obtained the Tao from the Khanate realm? Didn't Duobao also obtain the Tao from the Khanate realm? Why could he participate, but not him? This reason was completely unconvincing. Moreover, the God-conferment tribulation was such a big matter, but he, the eldest senior brother of the Jie school, could not participate. What was the reason? Master, what do you mean? Junior brother also obtained the Tao from the Khanate realm. Why can he participate in this calamity, but I can't? Xianxia asked directly with doubts in his heart. Because Duobao is a disciple of the Jie school, but you are not. Therefore, he can participate in this calamity, but you can't. The Tongtian sect leader frowned and explained. What? Eldest senior brother is not a disciple of the Jie school? As soon as the Tongtian sect leader said that, the disciples of the Jie school were shocked, and their faces were filled with disbelief. How could eldest senior brother not be a disciple of the Jie school? But Shizhuan wouldn't lie. Once the saint opened his mouth, it was the truth. If he said that Xianxia was not a disciple of the Jie school, then he was not a disciple of the Jie school. But how was that possible? Could it be? For a moment, the disciples of the Jie school could not help but have a bold guess in their hearts. Could it be that eldest senior brother had angered master and was expelled by him? Indeed, if someone who did not know heard the Tongtian sect leader's words, they would have the same thoughts as the disciples of the Jie school. However, as the person involved, Xianxia suddenly realized something after the Tongtian sect leader finished speaking. He was indeed not a disciple of the Jie school, nor was he the eldest senior brother of the Jie school. From the beginning, the eldest senior brother of the Jie school had always been Duobao, not Xianxia. Everyone called him eldest senior brother because he was the first disciple of the three pure ones, the eldest disciple of the Xian sect. When Xianxia became a disciple of the Tongtian sect, he entered the Xian sect, not the Jie school. Because at that time, the Tongtian sect leader had not become a saint yet, so how could there be a Jie school? After that, the Tongtian sect leader established the Jie school and became a saint. He included the disciples he had accepted previously, Duobao, the goddess of fire spirit, and the others as direct disciples. You're tuning in to the Wandering Hero YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.